A white-haired man stops and looks ahead, where someone is raising a crown. Kneeling before him is the arrogant king of the humans, begging for forgiveness for all the evil he has done. Surrendering his throne in exchange for his life, the pointed-eared figure simply keeps watching, and as everyone expected, the war ended with the victory of the vampires. He extends his hand, but in a flash, a single strike, the king's head falls to the ground. From now on, humans will live like cattle under the rule of the vampires. Everyone around starts screaming desperately, but he simply orders to kill everyone there, all of that, just to ensure that the glory of the vampire era lasts forever. On the battlefield, absolutely everyone is dead. Two men approach a small group near the edge of the cliff, asking if they are the last ones left. The one on the left murmurs that everything ends too quickly when so few humans remain. The one on the right tells them not to fear death, that pain is only temporary. But a mother embracing her children in the background speaks, saying that the days of vampire oppression are numbered. In her dreams, God had revealed to her that a human was being sent to save humanity. The men look at each other, confused, wondering what that strange woman is talking about. One of them tells her not to worry, because anyway, she won't live to see tomorrow. At that moment, she steps forward toward the first man, and the blonde warns that they are coming. The knight faces the vampire head-on and delivers a clean, vertical slash, but the vampire disintegrates and reappears behind him. When the knight turns around, the vampire has already marked him with a crimson slash. The blonde lunges to help, but he is also cut in half. The last survivor there trembles, cries, and tries to attack, but his sword is driven straight into his chest. The vampire appears from behind, effortlessly catching the blade with one hand. Breaking it and tearing him apart, another body falls to the ground. The vampire advances toward the mother and her children, saying that death will be quick. He raises his arm ready to strike, but just as he is about to deliver the blow, someone shouts his name. Yukal. It is a friend urging him to look to one side. From the smoke, a strange knight advances. The men ask who he is and if he belongs to that army, but Yukal says he doesn't have the scent of a living human, that he smells like a corpse. The stranger steps forward and jumps directly at him. The vampires laugh at his boldness for attacking, but the next second, his hand is already right in front of the first vampire's face. He grabs him, slams him against the ground, and makes him explode against the earth. The vampire almost completely disintegrates. Stunned and confused about what the hell that bastard really is, the man had just covered almost 300 meters in a single leap, and there his friend crumbles to dust on the ground. Yuko prepares himself and launches forward, aiming a slash at his opponent's leg. Seeing the perfect opening, he drives at his sword directly into the center of the knight's chest. The blade remains there. Yuko demands to know why he didn't dodge. He is sure the blow hit directly in the heart, convinced that the man should be dead any second now, but the knight simply extends his arm, grabs Yuko by the head and lifts him. The vampire, in panic, demands to know how he is still moving, with the sword stuck in his heart. Without responding, the knight sinks his fist directly into the vampire's chest, disintegrating him on the spot in front of everyone. The nearby blonde woman, overwhelmed with emotion, calls him the hero, but he notices that only the children have survived. He tells her to just keep moving, that 3 miles away is the sacred land, where they will find protection. The girl, still overwhelmed, celebrates and declares that he must be the hero, sent by the gods, but the knight seems confused by this and begins to remove his helmet with nails in his chin and his entire head stitched. Asks if she really thinks he looks anything like a hero. The children freeze silently. Then when his nose falls off, he bends down to pick it up, and the children scream even louder, calling him a monster before fleeing. Terrified, the so-called hero just laughs, saying that this kind of reaction was to be expected in this world. A rumor circulates, the rumor of a knight half vampire and half human who cannot die. The scene changes some time before a group of people dressed in plague Dr. robes find a man lying in the middle of an arena. One of them comments on how incredible it is he had died still standing in a combat position. Another asks if this is the so-called Gunter, and the answer comes with certainty. Yes, 228 battles in the arena, 228 victories, and not a single defeat. They knew he was the greatest gladiator of that time, but even the strongest human could never defeat vampires. The burly plague doctor questions if it is wise to trust his future to a stranger like him. The man known as Aryan responds that he will take the risk and believe in this. Fighter asks about the state of the corpse, and the answer is that decomposition has already begun, but it can still be used. And then, what is this? The fierce and sharp plague doctor steps forward, approaches the body, saying that times demand a hero, and that is why he will become immortal. The scene changes again. To the boy standing on a mountain of countless corpses, someone praises his work, saying that once again he has survived. Suddenly, he opens his eyes and sees all the plague doctors cheering in front of him, shouting that his eyes are open and asking if he can understand their words. Confused, he demands to know what happened, since he is sure he was dead. Someone explains that he has been reborn to save humanity. Of course, he has no idea what they mean, and the bald doctor orders to bring a mirror when they hold it up. Gunter looks and curses. What kind of nightmare is this? The boy has no arms or legs, nothing. Horrified, he asks what kind of monster he has become, but Arian calmly tells him that he is not the monster, that he is humanity's last hope. The bald man then explains that his brain now holds a life support device, something they have only managed to create once. As long as that mechanism keeps working, he cannot die even if his whole body is destroyed. Someone tells him not to worry, that the arms and legs are there. Made with special muscle engineering, the arms are already like those of a bodybuilder, and yet the fibers produce dozens of times more strength than normal. Being humanity's greatest gladiator, and now equipped with the enhanced ones, they believe he can face a vampire directly. Gunter, however, is no longer so upset and asks if they really brought him back just to fight vampires. Arian tells him to understand that he is the perfect candidate and that he also knows he was killed by vampires, so for the sake of humanity, he must fight for all. Gunter replies that all that saving humanity stuff sure sounds good and all, but no, still, he has one condition. So he tells him to come closer and listen. The bald man excitedly intervenes, saying that whatever Gunter asks they will consider, but Gunter traps the man with his stumps against his thigh, demanding to be freed from that curse immediately. Arian calls Reinhard, but Gunter warns them. He became the strongest gladiator because he learned to kill without hesitation. For him, both humans and vampires were selfish and narrow-minded people, and being resurrected just to fight again in this state only proves how foolish they are. The only thing he values, above all, is not other people but his own life. That is why, if they don't want to see this man's head fly off right now, they better give him arms and legs and set him free. Someone, a little surprised, looks at the clock. Gunter asks, what is she waiting for? Does she want the man's head to explode? She replies that there isn't much time left. Gunter, confused, presses her, and she explains that he has about 4 seconds left when he asks, what does that mean? Something flickers in his brain and apparently dies. The bald man is released and someone comments that, as expected, Gunter is out of control. Gunter opens his eyes again and finds himself face to face with the bald man once more, who asks him why he did something so cruel even with his jaw hurting. Gunter demands to know what happened, and the bald man explains that like any animal or machine, energy is needed to move. The source of energy for his body is the vital essence of a human, and it seems to come from Reiner, who is standing nearby. Oh no, maybe Reiner is a man. Hopefully he's not just a woman without breasts. Gunter asks what they are talking about, and Reiner, whom I will keep calling woman until proven otherwise, says that is exactly what he thinks. To stay alive, he must remain connected through that device and absorb his vital essence. Once the connection is cut, he can only move for about 2 hours at most. Gunter, desperate, demands to know what kind of nightmare this is, but the bald man calmly says that his reaction is expected. He insists that Gunter must believe, because everyone's life, along with humanity's survival, depends on this research they call human batteries. The people who received these devices, out of the hundreds who volunteered, only Arian survived. It's something extremely difficult to create, so Arian might forever be the only human battery. Gunter orders him to explain more, and he says that's exactly it. Gunter can't fight just for his own life, he also has to protect hers. Otherwise, he will only last a couple of hours before ending up like a decoration on the wall. The other option, obviously, is to accept humanity's support and fight against the vampires. In the end, however, it's his decision. Gunter is there, trying to process everything he just heard, when suddenly someone calls Reinhardt. Another plague doctor runs in, saying they have an urgent problem. The bald man begins to respond that they are in the middle of something important when the newcomer blurts out about the vampires just before a sword pierces him through the back. His body falls to the ground, and then a strange rat-like vampire enters, saying Lord Benson ordered him to take all the humans and the beautiful women. The other stranger on the right agrees, saying that's exactly it, while everyone else is stunned, wondering how the vampires even got into the base. One of the doctors asks Reiner what they are going to do. Meanwhile, Gunter is already shouting, telling them to connect his arms and legs if they have any love for their own lives. The bald man hesitates at the order, and the others show reluctance, saying they will die if they get too close to him. Gunter replies that if they don't, they will lose their general once he's dead. The men argue that there are only 4 people that don't need a general at that. Arian steps forward, saying she will buy them time, and orders to connect the rest of the organs. The bald man tries to stop her, telling her not to do it, and even Gunter yells at her to stay still. But she is already face to face with the vampires, demanding to know what kind of courage she thinks she has to face them alone. She should know they are superior in every way. But before they can finish off her arrogance, the first arrow flies straight to the face of one of them, caught in the air by the vampire. She mocks, saying they talk too much. He crushes the arrow with his hand and moves like a blur to one side. She shoots another, almost perfect, but he dodges again. She ducks, shoots another, he dodges again, and then closes the distance to give her a brutal kick straight to the stomach, slamming her against the wall and grabbing her by the neck. The creepy one stares at her and comments on how beautiful her face is. I agree, He says Lord Benson will like it a lot. Another monster intervenes, insisting that he also wants a part. Since the other one kept the last two, while they argue, someone murmurs that they are just playing, and then bam, before the vampire can even turn around, a devastating kick smashes his head against the wall. Now that I notice it, he looks a bit like Cyborg from the Teen Titans. Arian celebrates but is instantly caught by the head about to explode like a balloon. Gunter warns her to be careful, that now his life depends on her broken and badly. She insists that someone had to act. He looks at her for a moment and then says, "It's okay." But then the vampires get up again, their bodies reassembling piece by piece. Gunter is surprised that the creature didn't disappear even after its head was smashed. Arian explains that to kill a vampire you have to destroy its heart. There is no other way. Another charges directly at them. Gunter pushes her aside while the vampire lunges, aiming a punch at his chest. Gunter simply stands still, smiling mockingly. Staring at him, the vampire doesn't understand, and his head explodes again. While that one falls, another launches straight at Arian, but Gunter moves forward like a torpedo and rams it with his head, smashing it against the wall too. Reinhardt can hardly believe it. It's the first time the boy uses that body. And yet he moves so naturally, it not only seems like he fights well, it seems like he was born with those modifications, and he already realizes that although his strength is insane, his speed is not abnormal. The only way to move fast is by using the leg muscles to propel himself to launch his body forward, since his limbs themselves don't move that fast. Interestingly, in just 1 second, he has already adapted. Arian immediately notices that he is actually enjoying the fight. Gunter grabs the vampire's head and says he has practiced enough with that body. The vampire, however, demands to know who he is. Are humans some kind of monster? Creator Gunter laughs, saying those words are a bit harsh, that he has just been born. He extends his hand to finish him off, but the vampire begs him to wait, offering a peace treaty, claiming he has something valuable. Gunter tells him to speak, and the vampire reveals that Lord Benson is nearby. They are his creations, and as soon as they die, Benson will feel their disappearance and will appear right there. Even for him, it would be hard to fight that guy. Gunter asks why that Benson would bother to avenge trash like him. The vampire desperately shouts that it is because Benson loves them, that he is the only one in the whole world who loves them all. And also, if Gunter simply hands over that girl, Benson will let all the others go. Gunter looks to one side and says he can let him take the bald guy, but the girl is off limits. The vampire refuses, insisting he can't give up the bald guy. Gunter replies that unfortunately, negotiations are over, and pierces the vampire's chest with his hand, offer rejected. The same happens with the other, who disappears while crying out for Benson. The protagonist wants to know who this Benson is and why everyone worships him so much. Arian explains that he is a high-ranking vampire in the vampire world. They are ranked by the purity of their blood. High-ranking vampires are the pure ones. Born naturally, low-ranking ones are descendants of variants and mixed lineages. Looking at the illustrations, Gunter points out that the black-haired vampires all seem to be low-ranking. She confirms it, saying that the high-ranking have white hair and are weak to sunlight. The problem is they can use their own blood to forge countless weapons in battle, making them extremely powerful. While the two talk, Reinhardt intervenes, asking if they didn't hear what the vampire just said. Benson will be there in at most an hour. Gunter asks if the bald guy really believes that. He answers that it doesn't matter, at least they should be prepared. An hour is not enough for them to be ready to fight. Someone interrupts, saying that first of all, they need a clear answer whether Gunter will fight for humanity or not. He stops to think, and then says that, as he mentioned before, the most important thing is his own life, and apparently the only way to survive right now is cooperating. Arian thanks him, calling it a noble decision. While he already demands to be connected before it's too late, she nods, but says she first has a small gift for him. It's then when he receives the armor. His head looks tiny compared to it, like a bodybuilder's with a huge body. Curiously, the bald man says it looks wonderful and fantastic, asking what Gunter thinks. Each piece was chosen after countless tests to ensure it had the perfect appearance of a heroic knight, like someone who has returned from the dead. Gunter, however, says all that feels outdated, like something from old times. Someone explains the armor is refined with mithril, plus each part was individually adjusted to his body, so his limbs can be easily replaced. Even while wearing it, this design was necessary, because against vampires that move at extreme speeds, he will receive many hits, and they need to minimize the damage he suffers. She points to the meter on his wrist. That is literally his battery indicator, like on a Samsung phone. It shows how much longer he can keep moving since he's already connected. Through his head, the timer is set for 2 hours. Just then, the ceiling starts to rumble violently. Everyone feels the impacts from above, one after another, and Gunter realizes something huge is approaching. He warns them, saying it's something gigantic, but the bald man argues those vampires died just 40 minutes ago. Gunter just orders to cut the connection and asks what the escape plan is. Arian explains they are in catacombs under their hometown, the place specifically chosen to create it, and that main door is the only entrance and the only exit. Gunter replies angrily that she should have mentioned that before. With no other option to deal with the noises above, he puts on the helmet and warns her not to show herself, no matter what happens now hidden. Behind the helm, his expression hardens, while fixing his gaze on the entrance from the threshold. 3 bald figures appear, strange boys greeting with a casual hey. Everyone is confused seeing those 3 approach, but clearly, this is much more terrifying than any normal person, now that I notice. Our protagonist really has a guts-like aura. This time, the strange vampires stay there smiling, saying he is the one who killed their family. Gunter wants to know if they were those ugly, low-rank vampires, if he was the one who killed them all, and if he really finished them off so fast. The one in the middle laughs, saying it's impressive for a human. The others, however, were souls abandoned by their parents, and that's why they had such horrible appearances. And he thinks it's very sad the boy didn't feel compassion for the miserable way they died. Gunter, meanwhile, asks the bald man if that Wenzel guy is crazy. At that moment, the bald man asks if this is Wenzel, the face collector. The peculiar little heads confirm it, and the bald man says they are even, since both sides have killed many comrades. So he proposes a fair offer would be that each side simply goes their own way. The heads seem strangely calm, admitting it's not such a bad idea, especially with dawn approaching. Too bad, they swore loyalty to Lord Julius, a vow that declares every human in this world must be killed. Sorry, bald man, negotiations are impossible. Gunter then asks what Wenzel plans to do with that 3-headed body. It just won't last long. The heads start laughing, mocking him, calling him funny, and more start to sprout. Their words move from mouth to mouth while explaining that the very reason low-rank vampires exist, rank, is to protect those of high rank. If the sunlight did not exist, they would be truly immortal, and there is Wenzel right in the middle of all those heads, using them as protection against the sun. Gunter asks if that thing is really a vampire. Someone notices the obvious: all the heads are connected by blood, and now the name Face Collector makes perfect sense. Still, she is sure there must be some core managing all those connections. But before she can finish her thought, the heads lunge forward to bite. The impact hits. Like a magical attack, smoke rises, and of course, Gunter saves her. He can't lose the only person keeping him alive. He orders her not to stand there and to run to safety. She warns him to be careful. If he doesn't find the core, the fight will be useless. He simply tells her not to worry about him and to focus on staying alive. Wenzel advances toward another fallen body, ready to bite with his heads, but Gunter intervenes, hitting him with a brutal punch that leaves him stunned before he can even process what happened. Gunter finishes him off with another blow, sending him flying. He warns that if he doesn't find the core, he will just destroy everything until it shows itself. Reinhardt is stunned. He is actually facing a high-rank vampire face to face. As the severed heads crumble, Wenzel marvels at his strength, saying it's incredible. He had never heard of such a powerful hero among humans. They wonder if he really is human. Gunter replies, it doesn't matter, and lands another punch directly against the massive heads, but suddenly, one of the heads bites his armor from inside, declaring that in the end they have caught him. The biting force of those jaws equals that of his own fists, which means once they start to clamp down, there's no escape. Gunter tries to move his other arm to land another blow, but it is also bitten and trapped. In seconds, both arms and his legs are immobilized. Wenzel mocks him, saying he has a little gift for Gunter. He is about to experience the true hell that exists inside him. The next chapter opens in an abandoned dump where a boy is crying more than obvious. That boy longs for his mother and cries for help. But days passed and no one heard that desperate crying. Eventually, the boy's screams came to an end. From that moment on, the boy gave up on finding the warmth of a family or someone who could come to save him, and instead focused solely on finding a way to survive. The heads bit Gunter's arms and armor, and he admits the biting force is incredibly strong. 2 or 3 heads he could handle, but there were hundreds, all clinging to his body with his limbs immobilized. He has no idea how to free himself. He imagines there must be something further down, but he can't even guess how many layers of heads are stacked beneath him. And if he fails, he at least needs a backup plan. Then, from the depths, someone declares those filthy vampires will not pass. A voice shouts that it will defeat them all. Gunter is confused, but the massive heads that were once human claim they have not been defeated and will never surrender. At that moment, a hand appears over him, and a strange, shadowy demon emerges, declaring that that man was once a great hero, Albert Lauren, who saved hundreds of people, but now he is also part of the collection. Gunter points out that those heads are sitting on a pillar of hair, which means they must be quite valuable. Benson confirms it, saying those are the heads of heroes who sacrificed themselves trying to save others. He chose the most beautiful to display their noble spirit of sacrifice. It will continue to exist until the day humanity perishes. Then he asks if Gunter doesn't find wonderful the hell he created. Gunter replies it's an impressive place, but fitting Benson's head there will be a problem. Wenzel calms him down by praising the strength and determination he has shown, greater than that of any hero he has ever seen. But Gunter interrupts him, saying he doesn't understand that he is simply very ugly, and his head would look horrible in that collection. Wenzel, puzzled, asks if he is really that ugly. Gunter tells him to take a look when his helmet comes off. Benzel begins to sweat, stunned, unable to comprehend what he is seeing. He admits it is the ugliest human face he has ever seen, uglier even than the most grotesque vampires. Gunter lowers his gaze, discouraged, saying he never imagined living long enough to be called a monster by a monster. Good. Now that Benzel has seen his face, maybe he can let him go. Benzel, still confused, asks if Gunter really thinks he will come out alive. Gunter replies that he thought it should have been impossible, but now that he has seen a glimmer of hope, he must fight, and with that, he sinks his teeth into the first head, tearing it off his arm. Benz watches, then bursts out laughing, asking if Gunter really thinks he can bite his way out. He must understand this is nowhere near enough. No one has ever escaped from this place, but Gunter keeps biting, declaring that he is not just anyone, that he is Gunter, and then slams another head with a brutal headbutt, no matter what happens here, and swears he will survive. Bites another one, tearing it apart. The demon keeps watching as more and more heads close in on him. From outside appears a huge wasp nest. The plague doctors assume he has already been killed or devoured, wondering what they should do next. The bald man insists he warned them that choosing Gunter was a mistake. He tells Aryan that this was the worst possible outcome, sending a corpse knight to a place like this. They should never have put humanity's hopes in such an idiot. But Aryan points out, telling them to look. Multiple heads are falling. And in the middle of it all, suddenly, Gunter bursts in with a devastating punch. Just then, the bald man shouts that he always trusted Gunter, the hero. The protagonist crashes to the ground, instantly dodging to one side as another column of heads collapses. But then the bald man asks where the boy's legs are. I just saw him move using only his hands. Aaron intervenes and says the plan has changed, that there is no way they can win this hand-to-hand fight, so they will handle it differently with Aryan in charge on his back. The plan is to run until dawn, but just as a head lunges to bite, he jumps, rather he crawls with his arms, trying to escape with her on his back. Aryan reveals that he actually brought extra body parts with him. He hadn't mentioned it before, because he never accepted his proposal, but some of those pieces had been modified to serve as weapons. Gunter, however, thinks there is not enough time to equip anything. Doing so could cost them everything. First, they need to create some distance. He propels himself forward again. Now I'm not sure if we should call it a jump, since he's using his hands. That's a paradox. One moment, I'll check with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT says that if you propel yourself with your hands, that is technically a lift using upper body muscles, not a jump. A jump only happens when you use your legs. Unfortunately, during one of those lifts, the demon manages to see Aryan's face and smiles, saying she is too beautiful. Immediately, he starts running towards her desperately, shouting that she must be part of the collection. Gunter, hidden nearby, murmurs that it seems he has gained an admirer. How long until dawn, he asks. She replies, if it is like yesterday, maybe 5 minutes. The good news is the exit is clearly in sight. They just have to wait for the moment and run, but while they hide, the bald man and the other plague doctors are trapped behind iron bars begging for help. Gunter says it is sad to see human lives about to end, but the truth is that he is going to use them as sacrifices to be able to escape. He tells Aryan that this is the best choice for the future of humanity, so it would be better if she doesn't do anything foolish. But she looks at him, and he notices it. She keeps looking at him, and he realizes that she's about to do something reckless. Sure enough, she comes out from behind the column and calls Benzel, telling him she has been waiting for him. In an instant, the monster stops attacking the others and lunges straight at her. Gunter is forced to propel himself with his arms, grabbing her and running, scolding her for doing something so stupid. Now that they are near the bottom of the chamber, there is no choice. They must escape. He runs toward the door and throws himself forward, but toothed mouths rise from below, almost biting him. He crashes against the stairwell wall, then climbs up at full speed, while the swarm of heads chases them, screeching that they are enchanted by his bravery. They say he absolutely must join the collection. Gunter keeps climbing, and Aryan warns that they are almost reaching the sunlight, but then the heads grab one of his arms again, telling him to become part of the collection once more. He growls at them to let go and then tears his own arm apart, using the recoil to launch himself upward. He finally emerges from the depths and faces the rising sun. But the moment he relaxes, someone calls him. They are dragging him backward. One of the heads mocks, saying that in the end, they still managed to take one with them. And it seems to be true. Aryan has disappeared, while Gunter screams desperately, but one of the heads that touched the sunlight turns to ashes. Nearby, the vampires call Lord Benzel, asking if he is okay. He responds sadly that he failed to avenge his family because of that monstrous night. The deformed creatures, they reassure him, saying it's okay. What matters is that he is still alive. The spirit of his family will live on and everyone will remain proud, but Benzel warns them that this enemy is not someone they can face. They cannot afford to lose more family members. He will have to take care of this problem himself. And with that, he says he needs a few more faces at that moment. One of the vampires says okay and announces they brought 34 perfect faces for him. Another says he brought 7. Another adds, he brought 2. Benzel celebrates, praising them all, saying they are all wonderful and it was an incredible job. Still, he admits this is the one he likes the most. He tells Arian to calm down, that soon she will be inside him. Together, they will remain united until the end of humanity. Meanwhile, Gunter is shouting, demanding the bald man connect everything quickly. The bald man tells him to calm down. He never manages to do anything well when he rushes. Gunter responds angrily, telling him to look at the meter on his wrist, that his time is running out. Soon he will freeze and that will be the end of everything. Then he asks, couldn't they just take another person to turn them into a human battery and revive him again? The bald man asks if that means Gunter wouldn't save her. Gunter laughs. Who knows? Maybe he wouldn't. The bald man explains that unfortunately, it's impossible to create another human battery. The device inside him doesn't regenerate a corpse. All it does is supply energy to a dead body, stabilizing it temporarily. That's why completely dead bodies cannot be brought back. And normally total decomposition begins after 3 days. Gunter realizes that if he dies now, after 3 days, his body will be too decomposed to be restored. By then everything will already be over. The bald man explains they arrived late to the arena because they only received the news of his death in the Colosseum. When it was already too late, the plan was to reach him before decomposition began, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. Also, creating a new human capable of serving as a battery would take years. In other words, if he doesn't save Arian, he is also dead. Gunter, still confused, demands an explanation of how this device works and where it came from, but the bald man says he can't reveal it yet. As trust grows between them, the protagonist will learn little by little. He begins to get up, asking where his right arm is. The bald man replies that it is something special, since close combat against Wenzel is difficult. How about having something for long range? Gunter smiles, saying it sounds interesting. Place your bets, guys. Machine gun, cannon, grenade launcher, or something else? Place your mental bets and let's see who wins. My bet is a cannon back at Wenzel. The vampire is in a frenzy, trembling and crying, extending his arms, telling the victim not to fear, that it won't hurt. Blood drips from his hand, crawling over the person's face, consuming it completely. Wenzel declares that his blood is both his instrument and his will. The body collapses without a head. Another face has been taken, smiling through it. He says that his blood is his will incarnate. The people in the background are frozen with terror, fearing they are next. Wenzel fixes his eyes on Arian and tells her she is next, that they will finally become one. She simply stands there, looking back at him. He comments on her determination. Eyes full of honor and strength show no fear, even in the face of death. He is eager to witness the moment when those same eyes are consumed by fear and regret. But Arian responds that the only truth that scares her is that no one has managed to save her heart. Wenzel moves his fingers and admits that it is truly impressive. He is eager to see that same face, repeat those words once he is inside her. He prepares his blood to advance on her, when suddenly someone calls his name out of nowhere. Another man attacks, saying he waited for Wenzel to lower his guard to deliver the perfect strike. He lunges with a sword, but, of course, is instantly immobilized. And you can't help but wonder why the hell he shouted first. He should have just delivered a clean strike. Wenzel's followers apologize, saying they never imagined a knight would be among the faces. The captured man shouts that even if he dies someday, a hero will manage to end Wenzel's miserable existence. Wenzel approaches, saying he loves encountering a hero full of courage like that. It is truly a pleasure to see that disgusting faith humans carry, believing someone will save or avenge them. He can't help but laugh, then extends his deformed hand, telling the man to look closely. He became like this when he tried to save people from a fire. He vividly remembers staggering through those suffocating flames, the agony of his burning flesh, and what he gained in return. Praise for being a hero, respect from others. He received that for a short time, but soon admiration turned into contempt, and he was treated like trash. The hero shouts for him to stop lying. That story can't be true. But Wenzel insists he can easily prove it. He wipes the blood from his face, revealing a melted and corrupted visage. The hero steps back, shocked, and Wenzel says that that exact reaction is what everyone who once called him a hero had. Over time, he was no longer welcome anywhere, not because he did anything wrong, but because by saving one person, he was permanently disfigured. Everyone turned their back on him. He hides his face again and declares that this sacrifice will also be useless in the end. People only end up hurt. The hero shouts that just because Wenzel suffered in the past, it doesn't give him the right to massacre people now. Wenzel responds coldly that this is not a massacre. Someday, humanity will finally understand what they were trying to achieve. He cuts his hand, letting the blood cover his face, when suddenly someone interrupts him, saying he talks too much. Wenzel glances sideways and something cuts his deformed hand. Above, a gray pillar rises like a twisted tree. It turns out no one could have guessed he actually has a weapon that shoots. Huge iron stakes if you predicted it. You are a legend. Gunter, of course, he complains, asking what terrible designer created a weapon that is practically impossible to aim at that moment, Arian calls him. Gunter, relieved that she is alive, jokes that if she had died, he himself would have killed her. Wenzel comments that for Gunter to have walked there alone, he must be eager to die, but Gunter just tells him to stop talking and attack him, that he is running out of time. One of the two is going to die in a matter of minutes. The weapon they gave him is called the Bone Launcher. The name was invented without much care. It is one of the modified weapons designed by the bald man, an adapted arm to create shooting force. Through muscular energy, specialized fibers contract and then release, violently launching projectiles like bullets that can go through 4 or 5 walls. The disadvantages are obvious. First, the muscles must contract fully to shoot. Second, it only has 6 shots. Gunter murmurs that the thing is almost useless, but at least now, he has a way to fight at long range. Meanwhile, the bald man panics, insisting that they must kill Wenzel at all costs. There is no way to save Arian without going through him. And even if they could rescue her and escape, they would never get away from the lower-ranked demons. That would eventually bring Wenzel back to them again, considering that Gunter's body urgently needs to recharge energy. This enemy must die. Gunter calms down, tells them to relax, and then throws himself forward, promising that everyone else can die as long as he survives back in the catacombs. Vence murmurs that tracking him there was not difficult. The problem is he only has 15 minutes, and in that time he will have to finish everything as fast as possible. He mocks that Gunter's weapon is disgusting, no matter how powerful the shot was. Wenzel boasted that with countless layers of protection, nothing would ever get through. But the moment he said that Gunter shot opening a crater directly in the mass of faces, he admitted he still aimed poorly but would soon get used to it and hit the heart. Strangely, Wenzel told his allies to protect the remaining faces. They protested, saying it made no sense they should attack the boy and restrict his movements instead. Wenzel agreed but told them to be careful. Curiously, he really seemed to care about that, which was unsettling. The 2-over-1 launched themselves, swearing to destroy that strange weapon. Gunter warned them to stay away, that he was not looking to fight them. Still, he crushed 1.1 with a punch, smashing him to the ground, but since the heart was not destroyed, the vampire reformed behind him, grabbing his neck and growling that a disgusting monster like him could never kill him. Gunter grabbed his head, replied that he was not strong enough, and then blew him up. Throwing his remains back into the sea of faces, he launched again, dodging an attack from Wenzel while other vampires climbed from below. He stopped for a second, turned around, punched one in the face with his fist, and followed with an elbow to another, demanding to know why they were not afraid to die. The vampire dissolved but instantly reformed again from the ground. Grabbing his foot, declared they would always protect Wenzel. Because Wenzel was the one who treated them with dignity, their lives belonged to him. Gunter, puzzled by the way they acted, suddenly felt something. Wenzel opened his jaws wide, trapping Gunter's head. The grotesque monster mocked that the boy seemed proud of his teeth, so this time he would start with what mattered most. Gunter closed his eyes and shot upwards, piercing a column of heads and opening a path. He stepped aside as another attack hit his back, noting seriously that he only had 3 shots left. The problem was figuring out where he was. Wenzel in that endless swarm of faces needed a solution. Then Arian's voice echoed. She was calling Wenzel Gunter. He was confused, not understanding what she was doing, while other vampires approached, ordering him to stay quiet. Gunter still didn't understand when suddenly a crimson slash shone in front of him. It wasn't Wenzel, it was another vampire. Gunter responded with a brutal punch to the head, finishing him off. He stepped back as the mass of faces advanced again while Arian shouted Wenzel's name over and over. Her desperate voice, Gunter didn't understand at first, until he noticed one of the vampires behind her telling her to be quiet. Arian screamed again, calling Wenzel a disgusting monster. Wenzel, losing composure, growled that no matter how much he delayed, it was useless. But Arian shouted at Gunter to realize only certain faces reacted with expressions, and those same ones moved before the others, probably the closest to him. Just as she said it, a vampire covered his mouth with his hand, threatening to rip out his tongue. But before he could do it, another explosion tore through the center of the faces. Gunter clearly realized now some really reacted faster than the rest. Through the hole he had opened, he saw Wenzel. The vampires screamed in panic that it didn't matter if they knew where he was. He could simply protect himself with more heads and disappear again. He tried to rebuild himself, but part of the neural link connecting the heads had already been cut. He knew he needed to reconnect it quickly, but Gunter told him to stay still and fired again. Shattering part of his arm, the monster panicked, realizing he needed to flee. But Gunter only responded with a cold smile. Here comes the heroic shot. But at the same time, the vampires attacked him. From both sides, all throwing themselves on him. He was practically submerged in a sea of monsters. But he fired another shot, a direct hit right in the head. Damn, the guy really had the aim. His finger trembled just a little after the shot. Someone warns that to kill a vampire, you have to hit the heart, and now he was out of shots, which means they have lost. Gunter, however, asks what nonsense. He is saying lose and keeps fighting, tearing apart the vampires. He only has a flash of energy left, preparing for one last leap, saying it's time for the final attack. Arian begs him not to do it, but he declares that he will go with his body. He throws himself against Bencel, who is in the middle of regeneration, but meanwhile, Bencel accelerates the regeneration of his eyes just to see him approach. The next chapter begins with a strange figure with a big head asking his father if sacrificing himself for humans was worth it. They treated him like a monster. His appearance changed. Maybe it wasn't such a good thing. At that moment, he didn't know what to believe or what he should do. And now he realizes how naive he was. Someone places a hand on his face. Apparently, it is Lord Julius, if I'm not mistaken, who tells him he has been watching him for a long time. Julius says he intends to create a new world, but that the process will be painful and difficult, and that he needs the help of people like him. Honestly, it looks like this is Bencel when he was burned in the fire. He asks what kind of world Julius wants to create. Julius responds with something we don't hear, and the boy looks amazed, responding with something we also don't hear. Then Julius extends his hands, telling him to follow this path with him. The boy lowers his head and accepts. Back to the present, Gunter has pierced Bencel's chest with his fist, smiling as he declares that this time he has won. Bencel's last question is how Gunter can still be a hero, even with that monstrous face. And with that, all the other desperate and panicked vampires begin to dissolve, while Gunter loses consciousness. Sometime later, a cart rolls through the forest. Gunter wakes up inside it without arms, without anything. Only that device connected to his head. Someone tells him to move carefully because that thing is important and must not be broken. She also thanks him for his hard work. Thanks to him, countless lives were saved. Reiner also praises him. He never imagined that the recently reborn boy would already be capable of killing a high-ranking vampire. Gunter asks if the others also died. Reiner confirms yes, all were linked by Vensel's blood. The protagonist immediately concludes that the easiest way to solve everything is to kill the pure-blood vampires, since the rest will disappear. But Arian explains that unfortunately, the last pure-blood vampire, Julius, disappeared after the Emperor's death. Gunter asks how strong that Julius is and what his powers are. She admits that no one knows. No one has ever survived a fight against him, or maybe he has never fought at all. There are no stories to tell. Gunter finds that strange. Vampires usually don't drink blood to survive, so why is he killing humans instead? Reiner agrees, but sadly, the only option is to defend themselves. He says they should head to headquarters where Gunter will better understand what is really happening. Gunter asks if there are still human cities standing. The bald man replies, the last surviving place is the Holy City, where all survivors gather. It is a beautiful and fortified place. It was also there where they conducted all their experiments and discovered how to create their body. It is humanity's last stronghold, standing for more than 100 years without falling, and honestly, it feels just like those stories where everything starts with so much hope, and then the Titans appear and tear everything down. At that moment, the bald man gets down from the cart and tells Gunter to watch. Well, the city you will have to protect with your own life. The entire place is on fire. Gunter, stunned, asks if that is just part of the landscape. The next chapter opens with a pale-haired boy waking up, suddenly startled by the news that Vencel is dead. He immediately jumps up, demanding to know who killed him. If it was the enemy, then he bursts into tears, panicking that the enemy will also come to kill him. Desperate, he screams that he does not want to die, until a huge shadow grabs him and calms him down, saying there is no enemy. The voice laments Vensel's death, saying he was such an adorable little vampire. But what he doesn't understand is if a human could really have done it. It's hard to believe that Vencel was killed by an ordinary being. Julius orders Ian to find the culprit. A strange mouth blinks in the air and disappears. Julius does not seem the least bit pleased by what happened. Then we are shown Bajal, the place known as the Holy Land, humanity's greatest advantage. By settling there, its geography was located at the edge of a continent behind a pass of countless mountains. The island itself provided enough land to cultivate. Around it were all cliffs and jagged rocks, almost impossible to climb, and the only way in or out was a 1,200 meters bridge. With so much natural advantage, a single garrison could normally hold off 10 armies. So the question is, what is happening? Gunter demands to know why it seems everything is being destroyed. Reinhardt admits he has no idea. When they left, the place was perfectly fine. At that moment, the bald man calls someone named Leonard. Leonard cheerfully says he is relieved the bald man is safe. He was worried he would be the first to die. He looks at Arian, telling her she doesn't need to worry either. She also returns safe and sound, and without hiding his feelings, adds that she can call him Leonard whenever she wants. Then he turns to Gunter, asking if it really is him. Clearly already aware of the experiment, when Leonard sees the device protruding from Gunter's head, his expression darkens. He clicks his tongue and Gunter immediately demands to know why that bastard reacts that way. The bald man tells Gunter to relax and explains that Leonard is responsible for Basil's defense force. Clearly, however, the work has not gone very well. Leonard tells everyone to follow him because an urgent fire has just been controlled. Gunter insists on an explanation of why the sacred land is in such a state. Leonard explains that unfortunately, the outer section of the bridge was abandoned. They could no longer defend it. The bald man comments that it should have been easier now that Wenzel is dead, but Leonard immediately doubts it, asking how that could be possible. Gunter coldly replies that of course it was him. Still, Leonard doesn't seem convinced. He makes another sharp click with his tongue before explaining that the moment they left the city, they were attacked by a force unlike anything they had seen before, something far beyond any vampire they had heard of. He promises to show them the strange condition of the soldiers. Gunter mocks him, asking if this is supposed to be some kind of circus. Leonard, serious, says he wouldn't be joking once Gunter sees it for himself. The bald man asks if the city gates were really knocked down. Leonard nods. They were, and only by a miracle did the city not fall completely. That's why he wants Gunter to watch the bridge until everything is repaired. But the protagonist flatly refuses, saying he'd rather stay in the rear, while the meat shields die at the front. Leonard immediately calls him a shameless bastard, demanding to know if he has any idea why he's even alive in front of them. 136 comrades volunteered to become Death Knights, and all of them died. The researchers worked tirelessly to create those organs, and it's thanks to their sacrifice and the defense of this city that Gunter is alive. But as a gladiator, he never understood what sacrifice meant. His whole life had been about hurting others just to stay alive. The truth is, the one who should have died was him, not Gunter. The guy even admits he feels jealous. Well, go ahead, sign up yourself. If you die, you die. Gunter confronts him, walks closer, and says, "You're a very straight guy, huh? Every time I meet someone like you, I just want to tell you straight to your face, go to hell." The man reaches for his sword, saying they'll settle this right now. The guy is completely crazy, right? He could just hit him and end this. He was joking. But the next chapter actually opens with him being thrown out of the building and crashing to the ground. He really took a hit. Arian warns Gunter to be careful and not act so aggressively, while he's still recharging. Damn, it takes forever to recharge. He's not even at full capacity yet. Gunter ignores him, telling him to relax, that it was only self-defense. The sun is setting now, and that idiot is all bandaged up because of our guy, who mutters that anyway, he should have finished him with a single blow. Arian tells Gunter he must hold back, and there's no way he can win this war alone. And one thing the other wasn't lying about was how much it cost humanity to build every part of Gunter's body. Countless resources, countless sacrifices. Besides that, all the components are constantly breaking down, which means they always need more and more people, offering limbs and materials. She's doing everything she can to save as many lives as possible and protect the sacred land, so the source of their power isn't cut off. Gunter hears all this and simply asks if she's not telling him to fight on the front line. She replies that of course she is, that's the easiest way for them to win. He stops arguing and says okay, but in that case, he wants a new weapon. The bald man tells him to come see the modifications they have. Gunter sees something like an arm with a mouth and has no idea what the hell it is. Gunter sees something resembling an arm with a mouth and has no idea what the hell it is. The protagonist feels uneasy, while Arian asks if they really didn't produce anything else. Leonard, who suddenly acts very friendly, explains that they had to defend the city, so there was no time to do much more. Gunter, on the other hand, is furious, saying they should have made him a normal arm, instead of that mouth-arm abomination. But the bald man insists it is perfect, the biting force is immense. Besides, it comes with a flesh shield. That thing is crazy. Arian explains that with his own willpower, he can expand or shrink it at will, and obviously it is more resistant than any other part of his body, even against fire. Gunter, however, says he would prefer to have something like that bone launcher that was really cool, even if it only had 6 shots, but Arian explains that it took 6 months to build that. Each weapon requires an absurd amount of ingredients and human effort, and besides that they still desperately need arms and legs. The rest of the materials are somewhat easier to obtain. Gunter asks if they really have nothing else. She answers that unfortunately it is wartime at the gate. Leonard says he has to go back to protect the city, and wishes them both a good night after that beating. Now he really acts polite. Later that night, Gunter holds a sword, murmuring that he finally has something to prepare for the fight. Arian then explains that just as that man said, creating the Death Knight required more than 100 people working together, besides the support of the aristocrats and the royal family, everyone to agreed he was the perfect choice, so he doesn't need to worry about what anyone else says. She believes in him, only he can save this world, Hunter. However, he says he doesn't give a damn about that. She replies that having that kind of attitude shows he is lucky, but right at that moment, the protagonist mentions the 136 people who died trying to become human batteries. She seems a bit thoughtful, and Gunter wants to know why. After seeing so many die trying to become human batteries, she still chose to take on that role. She simply answers that it was something that had to be done. He just looks at her and says he doesn't understand sometime later. He is at the window, watching closely to see if something appears. Suddenly, Leonard bursts in telling him to get ready. The vampires have returned. Gunter has been connected to that device all day apparently to keep his battery charged to the max. Now it makes sense. They disconnect him, and Arian tells him he must come back alive. Is that he is too important. Gunter just puts on the helmet and says surviving is his specialty with the shield activated. Now he looks completely like the Death Knight warning that whatever comes out of the shadows will tear him apart from the forest. A twisted creature emerges, wondering why today's audience is only one person. Gunter watches curiously why that thing's body is so deformed and why it moves so slowly. He immediately crouches, preparing to leap, and throws himself forward faster than a vampire. His intention is to finish it with one blow, but the monster, still from afar, greets him and declares that to please the audience it will do its best. It calls someone named Evelyn and says the first act of the show is about to begin. The king of the pigs, and is interrupted mid-sentence by Gunter, who lunges with a slash, claiming victory. The problem is his sword didn't cut anything. The strike was perfect, so how the hell did that thing dodge it? The creature starts crying, asking why Gunter is being so rude. He should have properly followed the show. Then a twisted boy on the ground announces it is the show of the king of the pigs and the dwarf, and that it is time to start. It cuts off the hand, the blood rises, and out of nowhere, a circus tent materializes. Gunter realizes that Leonard's words about this being like a circus were literal. The curtains open, and from inside an attack bursts out. Gunter blocks it, and a man with a pig face is thrown to the side, but next to him, smaller ones, the dwarf and his pigs run in, all charging at once. Explosions shaking the ground. Gunter tears them apart easily, destroying them. Blocks another hit, cuts another one through one charging from the side, and holds MP another against the ground, pressing until the sword splits him. Furious, Gunter mutters that these weaklings are just wasting his time. Needing to finish quickly, he destroys another and runs straight to the tent. His plan to take the leader's head, but from inside a deformed mouth laughs, and suddenly it bursts into flames. Gunter raises his shield, blocking the hellfire. Then the same demon from before appears, riding a huge muscular brute. Gunter realizes immediately that this must be the so-called king. The demon mounted on his back declares that the king destroys all the village's enemies. Another torrent of flames roars. Gunter blocks it once again. The masked pig monster bellows that the king's fire burns everything, that Gunter won't take another step. But Gunter stays calm behind the shield, leaving the monster puzzled. The demon orders the king to intensify the flames even more. The fire intensifies, but Gunter just asks if they really think that's enough. He throws his sword, spinning like a boomerang, at the king's face. At the same moment, the beast shudders. Gunter pierces and destroys them both. With a devastating punch, catches his sword on the other side and comments that he expected this fight to be harder. Yes, he demolished them completely. But it's true, when the creature first appeared, he called this the first act. Gunter smiles and says to bring on the second show. He keeps walking through the tent until at the back he finds what looks like a sword with something attached at the tip. Around it are all kinds of equipment that look like torture devices, and he comments that the decorations here are quite charming. The demon, crying, thanks him, stammering that he's not used to anyone reaching the second show. That's why he had prepared it so carefully. Gunter swings again, but once more his sword hits nothing. Curses, wondering what kind of body this monster has that he can't land a hit. The vampire cuts in his hand, saying it's time for the second show. The blood merges with his body as he announces the clown's confession of suffering. Evelyn, fully transformed, tells Gunter to enjoy the show. As the whole place begins to collapse around him, Gunter charges to attack, but the monster jumps away. The protagonist mutters that the bastard is too fast, but wants to see how long he lasts. Gunter kicks, sending rocks flying, but the creature blurs into a thin line, dodging everything. Gunter glares at him as the creature pulls two swords from its mouth and lunges at him. He blocks another flurry of slashes with his shield. The swords clash violently. Gunter deflects counterattacks with a jump and a slash, but again the monster twists into a line and escapes. He has no idea how to hit something like that. Then the creature aims straight at his helmet, knocking it back. The next second it bursts out of the tent with a spinning strike. Explosions shake the area from afar. Leonard watches that Gunter seems to be under enormous pressure. It's hard to see, but clear enough. The knight's attacks aren't working at all. Worse yet, he's been forced back to the start of the bridge. The bald man urges them to bring out whatever they have he wants to see, while Arian looks visibly worried, and indeed, Gunter is now on the bridge, clashing against the monster's flurry of blows. He ducks under an attack, counterattacks, but again the creature dissolves into a line, growls, That the bastard moves like a worm, the monster responds with another blow detonations. Shake the bridge. Ariel observes that this creature seems capable of detecting any attack within a certain range of perception. The bald man asks if there's anything they can do to help. Leonard explains that unfortunately all the siege weapons were destroyed in the last battle. Ariel adds that fighting on the bridge must be avoided. They must remember that Gunter's body is pure muscle with almost no fat. If he falls into the water, he will inevitably drown. Then another blow arrives. Gunter is thrown off the bridge at that very moment. Someone shouts that if he falls, it's over, but instead of sinking in the river, only rocks splash. Gunter managed to stab his sword into the edge of the bridge, stopping his fall. Even so, he knows that if he enters the river, the furious current will make escape almost impossible. While climbing back up, he looks at the meter on his arm. Time is running out fast. This fight will be brutal. From above, the monster smiles sinisterly and descends towards him. Somehow, Gunter manages to propel himself back onto the bridge, but his arm has disappeared. When did that happen? Maybe during the king's fire when he charged through, it must have been destroyed. And that explains why he hasn't used his shield in a good while. The twisted creature smiles, saying Gunter is strong, much stronger than the previous ones, but now it's time for Arian and the bald guy to act. Both call to Gunter, giving him a direct order to retreat. If there is something Gunter knows how to do, it is survive. In an instant, he has already run back through the gates. Inside the castle, the doors slam shut behind him. Immediately, he asks if they came up with any idea during the fight. The bald guy admits they are still trying to devise a plan. Arian says, the perfect plan is to keep that monster on the bridge until dawn. They have no siege weapons nor suitable weapons for him, and Gunter still can't face a vampire alone like that. The sun will rise in 5 hours, but the problem is his limit is only 2, which means he will have to go out, fight, return to recharge, and then go back into combat again. The bald guy tells him to wait a moment, he will replace his arm. Gunter asks if that really is the best solution. Arian answers that the only fatal flaw of this strategy is that it takes longer to recover than he thinks. Gunter asks how long, and she says that for him to fight 2 hours, they need 20 minutes of recharge. Oh, that's not so bad. He thinks, of course, there is a demonic monster outside, which makes it risky, but still it could have been worse. But the bald guy adds, he has to be in a stable condition for the recharge to work. He can't just abandon the vampire, and besides that he has to protect himself and Arian. Gunter thinks it will be almost impossible to do all that at once. At that moment, Leonard bursts open the door, throws Gunter a hard look, and then closes it again. Turning to the soldiers, he orders them to hold out at least 20 minutes. No matter what, Gunter murmurs that this guy has lost his mind. He must have seen him fight that vampire, so he should know there is no chance. In 20 minutes, everyone will be dead. Reiner replies that they already know. Still, they have chosen to fight and protect the city. The soldiers are there, trembling, but with shields and spears raised ready, and Leonard utters the epic phrase, if we don't burn here and now, who else will reject the darkness? The door bursts into pieces and chaos erupts. Outside, the soldiers shout, desperately ordering to shoot, ordering attack, while blood seeps under the door at first. It seems that Gunter laughs, but he is not only standing with his eyes closed trying to stay together. Outside, the soldiers are shredded. Leonard falls to the ground and a monster looms over him, about to strike. He raises the shield, the head crushed, but still blocks the first attack. The monster goes for a second blow, and then Gunter breaks through the wall, shooting with his bone-launching arm. Biting with that monstrous jaw, you got distracted, he growls. You didn't think an attack could come from the wall, huh? Leonard, surprised, demands to know what he is doing. Gunter, there. Yes, he had just started his recharge, even the bald guy. He is impressed that the one-arm strike worked. Gunter thinks to himself, everyone knows he can't keep this fight here for long. With all these people around, it only took him 5 minutes to recover. He can keep this battle going until dawn. That's because he's going to drag this monster somewhere else. With that, he jumps off the bridge, along with the creature crashing into the sea below, declaring that now neither of them will escape underwater. He holds the monster with one arm. Punching its stomach, he laughs, asking what the bastard thinks about fighting in a place like this. He swears he will crush its heart with his own hands. The monster struggles, coiling around him like a snake, stabbing his sword into his arm. Due to the human battery connection, his first limb is easily torn off. The arm mouth tears a piece of flesh before receiving another stab, this time straight into the abdomen. Both scream, struggling in the black water. The monster tries to swim upwards, but Gunter emerges from below and bites it in the stomach, growling that this alone won't be enough to kill it. With that bite, the creature's heart is exposed. He throws another punch, just as Gunter goes for another bite, and then a voice, the voice of a woman, reminds him. They're in that wasteland, where no one survived, and not a single living being existed. You called me. She once heard the weak cry of someone dying. Screaming with every bit of strength left, as she approached, she felt relief. But then curiosity overwhelmed her. This was a world no one would ever choose to be born into, and yet even someone born in a wasteland, left to rot, still desperately wanted to survive. For a while, she wondered if his screams were really for salvation. and now standing before him with bodies scattered everywhere. She says she has her answer. The beaten and broken boy asks what that means. Suddenly, the strange woman grabs his face and tells him he always wanted revenge. No one wants to be born in this world. No one wants to keep living here. Yet you scream to be saved with everything you had. You were born with that will to survive. Like a hungry dog, and that drive that will comes from your desire to take revenge on those who put you in this world. And on those who abandon you. Gunter closes his eyes and says yes. She tells him to prepare for the next fight. He will have to prove his will. Suddenly, someone calls his name, and all that remains is his head. Smiling with that crazy grin, it seems he really drowned. But luckily, since his head was separated and the brain remained intact, he is still alive. His body was too heavy, loaded with muscles to be recovered, but his head floated. Arian picks it up, thanking him for staying alive while Leonard tells them to hurry. Because the fight isn't over yet. Damn, only the head survived. Give the guy a break already. Reinhardt is in shock, seeing only his head being revived, reacting strangely, trying to understand what Gunter is saying. Ariel calms him, explaining he can't speak well without a torso. The new body is almost finished, he just has to wait a bit. Still, his head moves unnervingly some time later, already restored. He murmurs that the last fight was boring as hell, asks if more vampires showed up. Leonard says no, but that thing is probably still alive. Gunter insists that's impossible, he bit the creature's heart. Leonard replies he wants to believe that too, but where they found Gunter's head. They also saw tracks coming out of the water. He followed the trails and found a strange cart probably belonging to vampires. Since they had no chance to win directly, the priority was to recover Gunter's body. Gunter refuses to believe it, telling them just look at his teeth, that he tore the monster's heart. Leonard concedes, but they insist they have to check anyway just to be sure. The group moves forward, stealthily through the bushes, and indeed spot a suspicious cart. Leonard tells Gunter to check it, but to be very careful. As Gunter approaches, he sees the tracks are fresh, the windows are clearly covered of vampire hiding from the sun, and if a high-ranking vampire is inside, this could be their best chance to gain an advantage. Slowly, he reaches the door, opens it, and finds the cart empty. He enters and hears a chilling laugh echo. The door slams shut. At that moment, something lunges at his head from the side, but he blocks it. A fight breaks out in the darkness. He can't see anything. One of those small dwarfs armed with knives throws him out, and Gunter orders the others not to interfere. Another stranger appears carrying a little house on his head and announcing that the Pig King's assassin has arrived. Gunter demands to know why they are so weak if they are vampires. The creature explains they struggle to walk and fight because they are all failed births. Worse yet, some are failures born from other twisted failures over-twisted. Gunter mocks, saying he doesn't care, throws one to the side and declares that it's time to finish them all because they kill humans without hesitation. The one carrying the little house on his back, trembling, says it's okay. Just follow him and he will take him to the final act. Gunter follows him. Surrounded by countless spectators watching, he murmurs that the pig squeals they make are ridiculous, especially since they aren't even pigs. The creature explains it's because they weren't created as humans, but as fat pigs. That's why they sound like that. He draws the curtain and announces that it's time to see the most beautiful creation of all. There is the strange Evelyn. Gunter enters glaring, and she greets him, saying the audience has arrived. He demands to know how she's still alive. If he already ate her heart, she explains that a vampire doesn't die unless the entire heart is destroyed. He only tore off a piece of it. The only problem now is that since her heart is no longer whole, she can no longer use the power of the blood. Gunter thanks her, saying it's very kind of her to explain everything so clearly, but now she's nothing more than a shadow waiting for the sun. With that, he lunges, declaring that this time she won't survive. Meanwhile, outside, Leonard asks how much time the guy has left. They say 50. And the plan is that if another 10 pass without any news, they will try to enter and help. At that moment, one of the knights asks if those vampires were ever human. Leonard, confused, really doesn't understand. Then the guy tells him a story that once he heard about children in a city called Trumps, where orphans kept disappearing. While searching, they found a strange place, a basement with no sunlight, full of tools meant to break human bones, all kinds of metals and strange objects, and there at the back of the room, piles of broken skeletons stacked that clearly seemed to belong to young humans. The guy next to him wants to know what was going on in that place. The man simply explains he heard that there they made products. Apparently they were making and selling bizarre humans, and the smaller and more deformed they were, the more expensive they sold for. The guy says it's ridiculous, who would buy something like that? The chemist replies it was just gossip, he has no idea, but rumors said it was probably rich merchants and nobles. That was because having an extremely small servant was like a symbol of power, like a jewel, some kind of rare material. And the man says he understands, but why would someone do that to a person? The other explains maybe it was because they already had everything in this world, and unless it was something unusual and rare, they didn't want it. The end of the story says some survivors from that place were sold to a circus. He thought it was an exaggerated story, nonsense really, but maybe there had been the victims. Then he drops the bomb. asks the captain if the barrel they are protecting, the people behind that bridge, are really worth it, and man, while they are lost in all this philosophy, the protagonist smashes the door with his sword. The vampire jumps and says he was suffocated. They scraped him and broke his bones. The horrendous pain never ended. Even when he cried and begged to be killed, they ignored him until one day suddenly, they let him go and told him he was free. He asked why all that torment, all that pain, all that time, and why out of nowhere was he given that supposed freedom? That's when the man with the feather in his hat said, "Evelyn, fashion has passed." "Damn it." Evelyn laughs. Then her face hardens and she looks at him again intently. She says she wants to ask one last thing. What is the fashion now? Stories with systems and stories with a protagonist who wastes money on women. That's what's popular. Anything else can be reported. Gunter says that for him, fashion is that no matter what happens, he survives in the end. It's the story of a man. The whole scene with Evelyn first shows her face silently, then her reaction saying it's something difficult. Yes, definitely a solitary performance. And man, the carriage is destroyed. The sunlight comes in and she is completely turned to ashes. Damn. It ended a bit anticlimactic, but I think it was intentional, just to leave us heavy with that psychological weight. Meanwhile, back in Val, they talk about how it seems he already killed 2 high-ranking vampires, and according to what people say, there are about 6 more around Val. Knowing this, the guy says he's really going to have a lot to face. The market comments that they will have to help him because he won't be able to handle it alone. But the stubborn one tells him to stop being crazy because he should care about those people who are worthless. Besides, they had a natural fortress connected to the continent on their side beyond the sea. They had much better chances of survival, not to mention that vampires hate water. Have you ever heard of a swimming vampire? And just at that moment, they hear a knock, then another knock, and the guy asks, "What is that?" Aren't we going to find out now? Because we are seeing Gunter in a suit asking if they are really going to a festival when everything is ruined. She says yes, it's time to celebrate the death of 2 high-ranking vampires, and it seems she is visiting the outer region. Gunter says she seems to be an impressive person doing something like that when life and time are at stake. The bald man replies that the person coming is the current leader of Bahal. Still, it was better that Gunter didn't tell him anything weird because that would only be a huge headache. He doesn't fully understand it, but then a carriage approaches, and someone announces that His Excellency is arriving, the only heir of the pure lineage. Her Majesty Queen Olivia Hound. Everyone receives her and bows while Gunter just looks at the troublemaker. Yes, she seems clever. For a second, you can already notice, oh, what an artist. She has talent. But she's also a spoiled brat, complaining that the place is dirty and smells strange. The nearby man apologizes while Gunter murmurs that it's crazy that she says something like that in the middle of a battlefield. Obviously, it stinks. Immediately, the bald man trembles while the protagonist doesn't care in the slightest. She, however, approaches and says he must be the so-called corpse knight. She approaches, observes him, and says he's quite ugly, probably because his body was modified. Still, she heard that he already took down 2 high-ranking vampires and came personally to congratulate him for all he has done. One of the men beside her applauded, saying he's an example, fighting so hard for the people and for the queen's heart. She thanks them for the compliments, but says it's better to go inside and get away from this filth. Inside one of the houses, cobwebs everywhere. Still, she complains that the place is dirty. Oh, queen, honestly, I can't wait for you to get beaten up, then be saved by our corpse knight, only for him to be so Chad that he gives you a hit on the head. The brown-haired man says that everyone will be severely punished for the disorder, but she responds that it's okay, that it is wartime, and she will be generous, and only this wants understanding. At that moment, she calls Gunter and asks what reward Arian wants. He answers in her place, saying that what they really need are more men and materials for support. She reminds everyone that countless nobles and royals had doubted the corpse knight, but now that the plan worked, and this is a way to end the war, they need more help to sustain everything, so she asks for full support. Now, to be able to take great steps toward peace, the queen, however, looks at her and asks if it is not Arian. Even if she recognizes the girl's merits, how can she give all that support with her limited resources? She, Olivia Hound, as the last true descendant of the royal family, always needs to invest in countless future possibilities to keep her chances alive, so for now, the support Arian receives is the best she will have. That is a fact that will not change. Gunter immediately blurts out, what the hell is she saying? The bald man explains that she thought this plan would fail, so they invested in many other weapons. Gunter then raises his voice and she hears him, so she can't even admit that her plan and her decisions were wrong. Arian, a little discouraged, says that at least she should give official recognition to those who sacrificed themselves as part of the plan. The brown-haired man calls her rude, but the queen responds again, saying that she always wanted the research and had demanded that the project be carried out in secret. She always found this business of bringing back a dead person to use as a knight disgusting. After all, something like that would only stain the honor and reputation of the royal family. That is why nothing can be made official otherwise. The existence of the night would become public, and that would be bad for everyone. Then she declares that the reward will be the title of Count along with a fertile territory in the southern region. The odd guy next to her intervenes again, praising the queen as incredible, impeccable in her judgment, and then extends his little hand and says to come closer and give her a kiss if they accept the reward. Gunter glares at him and murmurs that he can't stand this nonsense in a situation where no one knows if they will die today or tomorrow. She is there, rambling about honor and pride. It seems they brought some crazy woman who says she is the queen, humanity is doomed. The men in the background apologize to Her Majesty while telling Gunter to shut up. And now the queen herself begins to lose patience and orders the protagonist to shut up. Oh no, now I'm hoping that a vampire kills her while Gunter just stands there laughing in her face. Then two men burst through the door and Leonard warns that danger is approaching. A huge creature was heading straight for Bahal. Outside, watching, the bald man tells Gunter not to lose his head, but Gunter responds that everyone is going to die anyway, including himself. So he's not going to respect that weird woman. Arian doesn't even care. She just wants to know if it's true that Toronto was destroyed in a single night. The blonde answers yes. That thing appeared in an instant and wiped everything out on the spot. Just a few blows and nothing was left. Gunter says it makes no sense. Speaking of strong blows, that's how they're supposed to be talking about a vampire. But it's then when the bald man starts trembling, asking what the hell was that thing rising on the horizon. My god, it really was a Titan. Attack on Titan, here we go. Our guy is about to become Eren Jaeger. Maybe every short guy's dream can come true. Connecting those 50 meters legs. Of course, with every step, everything was being destroyed, and the protagonist asks if the meaning of the word vampire hasn't been a little distorted. How could that thing be a vampire? Someone explains that a vampire is simply someone who uses the power of blood, and as far as she knows, those of high rank with enough strength and willpower can do whatever they want, and mold and change whatever they want with their blood. That vampire was probably the one known as the Iron Titan. Miranda, look at him. He even knocked down the Capitol's walls. Oh, clever bastard, I got the reference, and of course, no bullet, no weapon. Nothing worked against that skin of his that seemed as hard as steel. I'd already heard the rumors, but seeing him face to face like that was terrifying. Gunter comments that for someone no one had ever seen before, he seems quite famous. She says yes, precisely because of that. Countless studies have been done, trying to find his weakness. He tells her to let go, and she says it's simple, none. He has no weakness. They are already rushing the carriages. And she explains that unfortunately, that is all the information they have. No one has managed to cut his skin, so no one knows what's inside. Both, however, come to the same conclusion. If that thing enters Bale, the whole city will fall. Arian says that's why they have always tried to track the monster. Gunter wants to know where it's headed. The bald man replies that obviously they have no idea. Apparently Miranda always moves spontaneously, but Arian insists, just like any other, it must burn under the sun. Gunter finds it suspicious. Something that big would need a peculiar place to hide. But she shakes her head, says that when the sun comes out, it transforms into another form that is not a Titan, and it's at that exact moment after the transformation, when it has to be eliminated, that's the only thing she believes could work. Gunter realizes that basically it's a deadly game of hide and seek. The bald man says that looking at the map today, at the speed it's moving, it still won't reach Ball, so they have a few days to prepare at this rate. It will probably take refuge in some ruined village with many buildings, and if they don't find it there, it's very likely that tomorrow it will enter Bale. That is to say, the winner of this battle would be decided in that village. They arrive already seeing the gigantic footprints, at least that makes it easier to track it. As soon as Gunter arrives, he wants the perfect answer. For someone to point out where the monster is, Vero Leonard replies that first they will have to check the 120 houses of that place starting from the south, he asked. Troops from the Queen, but unfortunately there weren't that many available. The man in front replied that the Queen had ordered most to remain at the base and reinforce the defenses. Gunter laughs, saying it's clear that her pride matters more than any human life. But with no time to lose, Leonard simply orders everyone to start searching. They had to split into groups, enter each house, and check as much as possible. So here we are with them entering, disarming everything. Investigating drawers, boxes, even breaking down doors. Gunter enters and wonders where the hell that damn Iron Titan is. The bastard was a muscular giant, so he thought it also had to be a big human. That's why he focused on open spaces. Instead of narrow ones, he walks to a door, knocks, and says, "This looks perfect." A soldier reports that nothing has been found yet. The sun is still up and the bald man thinks something is wrong. Only a few houses left. Ariel replies it could be hiding in a way hard to imagine. Gunter hits the ground frustrated, saying he already destroyed more than 10 houses and hasn't found anything. Not even a rat, much less a vampire. Suddenly footsteps echo in the hallway. He stops confused, goes out and runs after them. Turning the corner, there is something covered with what seems to be a black cloth. He squints, wondering what that strange mouth was supposed to be. The scene changes to Lord Julius, and that mouth whispers in his ear, Now he knows the immortal knight is there, and the shadow confirms it. The man is sure another of Baal's creations. The one with the big mouth wants to know what that is. Bajal, the one all humans keep talking about. Everything he knows is that it's the only city left intact. Julius then explains that Bajal is actually where it all began. That's why he's been prolonging things, because it also has to end there, and the time has come. The one with sharp teeth says if that's the order, he'll tell Miranda. Julius says that's fine, but he also wants the immortal knight brought to him. The sun keeps going down, and just then one of the houses explodes. The bald man is already calling Gunter when he enters, and asks if it's a vampire, but instead, a boy comes out with a bear on his shoulder. He asks if it could be the creature, but everyone says it's impossible. The sun would set in an hour, and now they were screwed because if he's not here, Leonard has already moved. He orders them to resume the search, while Gunter complains that it's impossible to find anything when they don't even know what they're looking for. Arian just says it's the only option. They don't have many people here, and there's no other way to handle it. Then Leonard suggests burning all the houses. If there's something hidden inside, human or not, it will show itself to someone. He thinks it's too risky with the surrounding forests. The whole island could catch fire. Gunter tells him to stop and look for another solution, but the bald man refuses, saying they can't back down, because if they do, the next battlefield will be Bajal. He reminds Gunter that he was created for the plan to protect that city. Surrender was never an option. It was time for everyone to go back to searching. He runs off, and Gunter is left confused until Leonard explains that Reiner's family is in Bajal. He has a daughter he deeply cares about. Gunter smiles ironically and says the bald man finally managed to do something useful with his life, while Leonard yells at everyone to keep searching and not give up. Time passes, and Reiner realizes there's nothing here. He's just about to get angry when he hears a sound behind him. He turns around, and inside a box, something is shaking. Suddenly, the whole house explodes and something begins to rise. He is thrown back by the impact, while Gunter murmurs that he knew something like this was going to happen. Now they were all screwed. Arian asks what happened, and the bald man explains he found it in that situation. At that moment, he should have killed it. The protagonist wants to know what he means by not killing it when he had the chance. Then, he explains that inside the box what he found was a child. Gunter is shocked, but right in front of them, the Titan rises. As soon as the beast takes shape, it prepares a blow and throws it directly at the trio. Next chapter, the soldiers try to flee, but the monster crushes them with its steps, and from a distance he can already see the city. Gunter appears carrying a column, spins it 3 times and throws it, but it hits the Titan's arm as if it were nothing more than a toothpick. He jumps and throws a punch too, but nothing happens. Just as they had warned that skin couldn't be pierced, he keeps hitting, cutting left and right, but nothing works, until even his arm breaks. Then the monster moves, raising its hand to crush him, but he dodges and keeps climbing up its arm, thinking that no matter how strong something is, everything has a weakness. Another blow comes. The beast brings its palms together, but he slides again and keeps climbing. Still, in the middle of this chase, suddenly he loses his grip, and the Titan manages to catch him by the foot, looking directly into his eye. Gunter wonders if that could be the exposed spot, but then, damn, the monster shakes him with a blow, and the boy is completely disintegrated. At the same time, the Queen sees the Titan approaching. It was crossing the ocean effortlessly. The Queen declares that there is no immortal vampire. She hasn't met any of high rank, but has seen many low-rank ones killed by ordinary people. That's why he says they don't need that disgusting knight. Oh, Queen, do us a favor and die with the greatest pain possible. Then the #1 simp appears, saying that all the adjustments are complete and they are ready for launch. They have built a huge wall of spear parts. But seriously, if one spear doesn't pierce, launching 50,000 won't change anything. 50,000 spears still won't get in. The man insists they have 100 giant arrows with the strength of 100 horses' tension. The monster's skin would be easily pierced and its heart ripped out. They would win without leaving a trace of it. The Queen laughs, saying that the moment it falls, everyone will recognize her as the true empress. The one who rules humanity orders everyone to witness the power of the royal family. Raising her hands, looking ahead, orders to fire. Meanwhile, the others gather around what remains of Gunter, and the bald man says he can't believe it. This is what's left of humanity's hope. He tells himself he should have been firmer, that if he hadn't hesitated for a second, none of this would have happened. He's right, he has a daughter in the city, and he hesitated to kill that pale boy in the box. Arian looks sad for Gunter, when suddenly something falls next to them. It's a piece of his head with a small hand, trying to say he's still alive. It's then when they realize he had been in the tree. All this time, someone thanks him right there, saying they're glad he survived. While the poor man can't even speak, soon they are in the carriage with Gunter. Asking for new parts, he couldn't open his mouth properly, but Reiner keeps watching and manages to translate something like he can't open his mouth, attack the eyes. Arian says she understands, but even if they destroy the eye, the heart will remain intact. Then she whispers something else to Reiner, who translates it basically. He's going to enter the body through the eye and run straight to the heart. Ariane stops to think and admits that if they manage to get in through the eye that way, they might have a chance. The problem is figuring out how to get to the head in the first place. Just then, they hear the discharge, the endless sequence of arrows fired at the Titan, hitting directly in its chest. Everyone knew that was the weapon the Queen had prepared, and it really looked pretty strong. But guess what? When the smoke clears, the Titan is still there intact. Not a single one pierced. One of the men on the wall says the obvious. The Titan didn't fall and keeps approaching another runs and asks the Queen what they should do, but she demands to know the next plan. The man hesitates to explain while she grits her teeth in anger. And with that, the Titan is reaching the city. Meanwhile, the bald man keeps blaming himself, saying he should have been more decisive. Suddenly, someone shouts for her father and runs to hug him. She carries a four-armed Gunter on her back, saying she's glad he's safe. No wonder he's the great general. Reiner calls Audrey, demanding to know why she hasn't evacuated yet. He told her once it got close, she had to retreat. But she shows that she brought with her a piece of the corpse knight's body. And besides that, her hair was already falling out from stressing so much about her father. It turns out she's huge and muscular. That's why she says the bald man should worry about himself instead of her. He realizes she's right while the protagonist is in Ariane's arms. Struggling to babble something, the strange girl approaches, extending her hand, saying she wants to greet him. She's excited to finally meet him, but he just looks at her hand, glaring at her with even more anger, not knowing if she's mocking him. The girl apologizes, and Ariane says they don't have time. They need to connect pieces 2, 5, 3, and 350, and they are going to climb the Titan's body. Audrey then says that if it's about piece 350, and they are going to climb the Titan's body. Audrey then says that if it's about piece 350, she has already done something similar. She will connect that piece and bring back a crucial part. The bald guy starts saying it seems the steps have stopped, when suddenly, right in front of him, the Titan's kick hits the girl full force. Damn, that hurt to see. I thought she was going to be that tough and cool character, but instead she was destroyed. Phew, luckily, not the next chapter starts with Reiner saving her at the last moment. The problem is he is about to fall, and the place he is holding onto is breaking. She yells at him to stop being crazy to take this part of the corpse, the most important, and I gave it to the knight. The place where they hold on is collapsing, but then man, the protagonist, a hero, clings to the piece with nothing but his mouth biting the bald guy's arm. That's all he has left, a head and an arm. He's making unintelligible sounds, while the bald guy doesn't understand anything. While the Titan advances, destroying the city, people are being evacuated, and Leonard orders everyone to the edges of the island. That's when the Queen appears, asking how long her men can hold out. He replies that at this rate they won't last until night. She asks about the corpse knight, and he says it seems they are preparing to fight the Titan in another way. The Queen comments that it seems everyone is going to die anyway, since this is an island with only one entrance and exit, at least if no one remains alive. There will be no one around to judge her, which in the end wasn't so bad, right? That someone kills her is the only thing I ask for is probably exactly what Leonard is thinking at that moment. The scene changes to the production area, and our guy has a piece of giant frog hand held in his mouth. He hooks it on the bald guy's head and sticks it in place. He says at least the adhesion works very well. Reiner explains it's a weapon made from the arm of some lizard beast, designed to stick and thus be able to climb. Meanwhile, the bald guy thanks him for saving him. Gunter responds harshly that he didn't save anyone. What he saved was the body piece he needed. He didn't care if the bald guy had died, who now had a big scar on his head. The bald guy just murmurs that Gunter is always like that. There must have been a moment he remembered. Having been happy in the presence of someone else, he looks up and asks, "What the hell is this?" and wants to know if he's joking. His relatives didn't even have the courage to kill him, so they just threw what was left of the fetus in the trash heap. Or maybe he should have been happy back in the arena, where the only option was kill or be killed. A place where the only value his life had was the money people bet on the winner. He tells him to stop acting funny because there was never anything happy or interesting in his life. Until now, the only people around him were those who tried to kill or bring him down. And yet he survived, because even if everyone wanted to see him dead, he would keep fighting and surviving. Nothing in the world was more valuable than that. So he wants to compete and see who is still alive at the end, and he is sure it will be him. But Reiner then says that a life where all you want is to survive is a life where you have nothing. Gunter glares at him, but then the others announce the pieces had been connected. The protagonist rips the piece off his head and stands up with 4 arms. Someone calls him, but he doesn't respond. Finally, he says he'd like to see him tomorrow. He turns around saying that's a joke, and leaves the room looking directly at the Titan. Meanwhile, at the edge of the city, almost falling into the sea, people can only watch as the Titan approaches. Then suddenly, he looks down and sees something climbing up his leg. It's Gunter climbing at full speed. The Titan swings a palm to crush him, but Gunter jumps, clings with his extra hands, and keeps climbing. Damn now. He's fast already, climbing the Titan's back. He knew at this rate the monster couldn't catch him. but the thing was absurdly flexible. It hits him, sending him flying. Gunter crashes to the ground, looks at his arm and says it happened again. Then he jumps again towards the Titan and begins to climb the rubble bridge. The beast throws a punch, but he jumps over a falling stone and propels himself upward, clinging on, again with the lizard hand piece. But the bastard lands another hit. He dodges underneath, moves along the other arm, more hits come one after another. He slips around. But now it seems like he has been slammed to the ground, except he hasn't, because when the monster struck, he grabbed the edge of its hand, and there, under the impact, he notices something strange. Like a hidden spot beneath the island. He doesn't understand why something so weird is there. But his thought is cut off when the beast violently shakes its arm, throws him to the ground, and comes down with another crushing blow from afar. Arian shouts Gunter's name. He had already lost a leg. Gunter, stop losing limbs already. Another hit tears through the city and rips off one of his lizard arms. The creature looks at him fiercely as he screams desperately, clinging on until he finally reaches the Titan's nape. At that moment, all he needed was for the monster to be distracted just for a second. And just then the Titan, about to catch him, suddenly looks away as if it saw someone or something, freezes for a brief moment, and that's when Gunter launches himself upward, landing on its head. The monster tries to catch him, but then something strange happens because the next chapter begins with a small doll. A girl holds it, saying she couldn't do anything while they were beating her brother because the monster in front of her was too big. It was too strong. Its muscles solid as rock. Julius tells the girl not to be afraid. They would create together a world where monsters didn't exist. And now we see in the fight that Miranda hesitated for a second because on the wall she saw a girl protecting her brother. That was the moment she stopped attacking Gunter, and Gunter managed to jump on top when the monster turned to catch him. He slipped between its hands and managed to get into its eye. Damn it. And in just 1 second, the thing collapsed right in front of everyone. Incredible. The protagonist only needed to get in. That was it. Problem solved. Now he walks like a cripple, without an arm and a leg. Yes, but at least he killed it. The people of the city look at him, unable to process what kind of body that was, what kind of monster they had just defeated. The girl who had protected her brother asks if he is the one who killed the giant. He turns around and says yes. What's the problem? Naturally, she thanks him, saying thanks to him she survived, and her little brother too. She sends her gratitude. Gunter simply ignores it and keeps walking. The scene changes to Audrey praising him, asking how he managed to move so well with 4 arms. It was the first time he fought like that. He really was a naturally talented warrior. If only he had a more attractive face, they could easily erect a statue of him in the city, or maybe even graft some hair on him since they're at it. However, someone intervenes from the side, puts a hand on his shoulder and says it's a relief to see him safe again. He asks if she is sure, because her expression hadn't changed even a bit. Damn it, what kind of atmosphere is this? Gunter himself is confused, but then he looks. Who enters, interrupting the pleasant atmosphere. Apologizing, the queen, she says that in the end, she was the one who killed the Iron Giant, but the damage was enormous. Still, thanks to her extremely precise evacuation order, almost no citizens died. Most of their weapons were destroyed, but at least the people survived, and now she declares it's time to decide who should be held responsible for all this chaos. She asks Captain Reiner if he has any idea. The news reached her that at a crucial moment when he could have killed the vampire, he hesitated, and everything ended up happening. So it seems like a critical mistake, one that guarantees a public execution. My God, no way. Audrey begs for mercy, saying that even if her father was a mercenary, had a soft heart, and never killed anyone, but the queen refuses, saying that unfortunately, someone must be punished for everything that has happened. Gunter intervenes, saying that the more he listens to this old witch, the crazier she sounds. Surely the bald man is a coward, but in his eyes, the greatest blame falls on the one who wasted troops preparing useless weapons and made it difficult to find that damn box. But of course, in front of everyone, she will not admit that in the end she was responsible for almost killing everyone. The queen looks at him intently, demanding to know what he is talking about, and then out of nowhere, a man appears beside her, saying that the queen is still playing a role she is not fit for. Gunter realizes he didn't even notice the man approaching, and before the queen can understand anything, the protagonist's head rolls on the ground. The stranger declares that he is the king's brother, the last true royal survivor, the one who failed to become king, known as Velvet Hound, and as part of the promise he made to Julius. He came here to take the immortal knight, a protagonist who is only a head, against a 20-armed monster. Impossible. The next chapter opens with soldiers being completely torn apart by this Velvet. He tells them not to waste their lives so uselessly, that he is the last true survivor according to Julius. He has to take the immortal knight, so they better not get in his way. He will leave without killing anyone. He shows them the head, saying they wouldn't want to die for something like this. The knights reluctantly agree and step aside, because none of them could kill him anyway. Then Olivia stands in front of him, saying she has heard rumors that her uncle really had become a monster. He replies that he still seems to be suffering quite a bit, and what he wants to know is if the queen or the princess will really stand in front of him for that head. She looks him in the eyes and of course simply steps aside. As if she really cared about that, Velvet passes and then says that his footsteps are loud. True royalty makes no sound when walking, and clearly that struck a nerve in her, leaving her furious with rage. Velvet keeps moving forward, being escorted while everyone watches. The crowd does not react. While Reiner says they have to stop this if that man crosses the bridge and enters the forest. This place is finished. The forest is full of obstacles, hard to track and even harder to fight, and dawn is coming soon. They had to buy time to recover. Gunter Reiner's daughter then shouts, asking why he is not running, but just walking. Velvet replies that true royalty never runs in front of others. Well, then they better follow him and watch until sunrise, because he is not going to run. They follow him across the bridge until someone orders them to stop it. Is Leonard standing face to face with nothing but his courage? Velvet asks if he really thinks he can block the way for the sake of a head, and Leonard, damn, it says, yes. Velvet wants to know why. Leonard replies that it is because that man is humanity's last hope. Velvet laughs, saying it's funny, every human he has met has lived only for themselves. In the end, those who hurt humans the most are other humans. So why does Leonard think it's worth risking his life for such vile creatures? Leonard lowers his head, but suddenly he raises it and declares that still he believes humanity is worth saving. No matter how dark the world is, he believed in the goodness of humans, who never lost their light, and for those who only wanted to kill each other. He believed it was the light of the righteous that would heal them, and it wasn't just him. Everyone felt the same. They would not stand by letting this choice turn them into monsters. Brave, no doubt, and even Velvet admits it. Velvet replies that it's a touching speech. Too bad that of the 1,000 people in the city, only 5 are standing in front of him. That really would be enough to stop him. Leonard ignores the threat and tells Gunter that since he had saved him once, now it was their turn to do the same, and they charge at him. Honestly, I thought they would come up with some strategy, some crazy move, but no. We see just before Leonard thanking them for being with him. They responded that since he had saved their lives once, dying did not scare them. What they feared most was dying without meaning. Leonard assured them it would never be meaningless, even if they were nobody important, never written in history, never the protagonists of the world. Even if they were not great generals or kings, maybe that tiny spark of courage could become strength for something greater. At least that's what he believed. The soldiers look at each other and smile, but then damn, they are destroyed. Thrown on the ground with one leg, -1 arm ripped off at their side. Leonard, also already without an arm. Velvet passes by them, saying they were arrogant, but still finds their courage admirable, and that's why she will spare their lives. Because mercy is also the duty of royalty. She keeps moving toward the forest, saying that once inside, even royalty does not need to walk. It is the perfect place to hide from the eyes of the prey. But then someone calls him to wait. It's Arian. The king asks if she plans to fight him. She answers, yes. He warns her that a show of mercy is already more than enough. If they fight, he guarantees he will die. Gunter's head is right there, clearly trying to say something, and someone responds that either way they have no future without that head. So if they are going to do something, it must be to try to save it. Although this was a man who had lived his whole life fighting, he just looks at her and says, it's just another touching confession. Curiously, she blushes a little, but then he draws his sword, saying that unfortunately, here is where she will die without hesitation. He swings a slash to cut her, but she barely manages to raise her sword to block. Squinting one eye, nothing happens, or when she opens them again, the sun had already risen, and her arm was burning. Velvet understands he had been trapped in the shadow of one of the few trees near the forest. She murmurs that if he had taken just 50 more steps, he would have been safe. Just 50 steps, such a small but so important distance. Now the queen practically laughs at him, saying he really is the face of true royalty, pathetic and pitiful. Hiding under a little tree, risking his life, terrified of death. At least, he should have brought a low-class vampire to cover him, or something like that. But it's silly to think that since he was expelled from royalty without a single follower, of course he doesn't have a vampire. Velvet admits when his father exiled him, he was sent to an island and had no one by his side, so what will they do now? The queen says it's time to finish off a member of the royal family. Maybe she should cut part of that tree or burn it completely. Velvet answers that destroying the tree to burn it in the sun is not something an honorable royalty would do. He never killed unnecessarily, and if he wanted to flee, he could have easily escaped, but everything he does is to defend the true honor of being royalty. That's why being trapped under this tree is part of the process. Defending his honor, even if she takes advantage of that weakness. To kill him in such a cowardly way would be unthinkable for a descendant of the royal line. Someone calls it sophistry, an argument created to give the illusion of truth. I'm super smart, definitely. I didn't just read it on Google. He says it because this man is trapped in the shadows only thanks to the sacrifice of the knights. They should cut down that tree now to finish him off, not ignore the honor and sacrifice of all who gave their lives. Velvet then declares that as royalty, she will make an honorable suggestion. Arian keeps calling his majesty while he wants to know if she will listen. Curiously, the queen looks away to one side, looks back at him, and her expression changes. The next chapter opens with someone calling her pathetic. Maybe it's him, mocking that holding the fork 3 times during a meal shows that she understands nothing about etiquette. Now it's clear why her father didn't love her. She was never a worthy vessel of royalty, truly living up to the name Olivia the Fool. The scene changes to her #1 fan, asking if she really accepted the offer. She replies that to reject something fair would be dishonorable, and that this time she will prove she is worthy of royalty. Then she demands to know where Patrick was during all this chaos. He barely saw him. He hesitates a moment before saying that he was looking for a way to escape with her if things got too dangerous. She angrily replies that she knows that in reality, he was only securing an escape route for himself anyway. He better disappear from her sight without a word, or she will cut off his arms and legs, and not to forget that his burial will always be next to hers. He simply replies that he understands and leaves. On the bridge, someone asks if they really are going to let that vampire live and why. Arian explains that it seems to be because they accepted the duel. Audrey finds it ridiculous since that man is only trapped. Thanks to everyone's sacrifice, Ariane responds that they have no choice but to accept. The bald man then asks what duel they are talking about. The scene returns to the tree, where a man raises his arms and declares that he is the true warrior. Among warriors, he is John Bear of the Bear family, and he was there as a representative of the Great Queen ready to finish Velvet with his fists. It is then when someone explains that it is an honorable fist duel. Basically, the two will be face-to-face, throwing one punch at a time. Whoever receives a punch and then takes a single step after loses. Audrey understands. The idea is to keep hitting each other until one of them collapses. Which she thinks is ridiculous is that everyone is risking their lives fighting here. Just so. Such a stupid contest decides the future of humanity. Reiner says it doesn't matter. The goal is to recover Gunter's head, and that is the most important thing. Normally, in this type of duel, 4 representatives are sent, but since Velvet is alone, obviously he will do all the fights himself. The bald man is optimistic, saying that since they can use 4 people, they still have a chance. All they need is to force him to take a step. Byron motivates himself, saying that it is possible he can win. Since they accepted the duel, all he has to do is make this guy take a single step. No matter how strong a vampire is, the face has no defense. If he manages to connect the first punch, this guy will collapse, then he will win the duel. He will get an even better title and maybe even aspire to the position of emperor. Honor and money were there within reach. The announcer declares that both have accepted the duel. You can dodge a punch out of fear, but if you lose balance and take a step, you are considered the loser instantly. Then he announces that whoever accepted the duel challenge, the man has the first punch. Bear shouts, saying that this punch is for fame and honor, and he stamps it on the vampire's head. The crowd cheers, saying it was strong enough, and yes, it really shook Velvet's face, who admits the punch was strong, but the announcer clarifies that Velvet did not move, did not step back, so now it's his turn. Byron tries to say something, but then Van receives a cannon punch to the head and flies, spinning through the air. Instantly, Velvet is declared the winner. While everyone wonders if Byron just died, Patrick looks hesitant. While the queen says she didn't expect much anyway, she only has to win once. The next challengers are those who have already won duels like this, so she is eager to see what happens next. The second son of the Brun family, Nicolau Brun, steps forward, a huge guy. Where the hell was this legend when the monster invaded, or when that vampire woman was massacring everyone? Even Velvet admits that this one does seem stronger, while Nicolau thinks this fight is not about strength. He has to land a vital blow, create panic, and then it will be easy to make Velvet move. And the best vital point at the start of the fight is the 100. The vampire really staggers when hit, his head twisted to one side. Audrey looks excited, but the chapter cuts right there. Then the referee is about to declare Nicolau the winner, until they see that although Velvet's body twisted, she didn't move a single foot. Nicolau insists it makes no sense. Her entire back turned, but the announcer says she didn't move her foot, so there's no problem. Nicolau starts to protest, and then he also flies out, crashing to the ground. Unless, and the crowd wonders if he's also dead. Then the third representative steps forward, Joseph Rambler, and suddenly the idea hits me. Could the last duel actually be Reiner's daughter? She is tall, muscular, made for this. Joseph says the most important thing in a duel like this is to know your opponent, study their patterns, habits, and now he is sure he knows how to win. A crucial weakness in Velvet's fighting style had been revealed. He smiles, saying he will show it, except he already flew out too. We didn't even see the blow he threw, or Audrey complains that it makes no sense that the lives of everyone in the city are being wagered like this. Arian adds quietly that now all they can do is pray that the last representative makes a difference. She asks who it will be, and Velvet immediately questions why it would be Gunter. Her head is his possession. She can't just hand it over. The queen replies that she never said she would use the head, never mentioned not using Gunter himself, and since all Velvet has is the head and not the body, clearly the body counts as a bigger part of Gunter, so it can be used. Besides, as he swore in the name of royalty, if he wins the duel he keeps the head, or is he afraid to flee this fight in a dishonorable way? It seems Gunter recovered his head, wondering what the hell this so-called duel of honor is supposed to be, and he doesn't understand why that bastard even let him go. Oh right, probably the vampire had covered his ears the whole time. From the background, the queen declares that this is a duel of honor, something someone like him who lived such an insignificant life could never understand. He just responds that he doesn't care to understand it anyway. The queen then says that if he wins this duel, she will not execute the bald guy. Of course he would have to win it honorably. Audrey thanks her and the queen simply orders preparations. The duel would take place at sunset, shortly after Gunter is testing his new arm, asking what this strange sensation is to someone. Explains that this arm is designed 100% for torso rotation, transferring force to a blow, but he must be careful because it was built in a hurry and can break easily, and the colors are a bit weird because they are the arms of knights who were knocked down when Velvet crossed the bridge. The protagonist feels uncomfortable saying it's strange to have pieces of each of them like this, but she tells him it's actually amazing. After all, he himself said the most important thing was to keep living. He should already be used to it. His body from the start, all its parts were built through the deaths and sacrifices of others. Hearing that, Gunter calms down and feels motivated again, and now they are face to face. While the announcer declares the final duel of honor, Velvet on one side is thinking intensely. She didn't expect to be in this situation, but knew that stupid Olivia would try something like this. Everything so far had been within her expectations. Besides, some of her many arms were holding on to the bones of his lower leg, which meant that even if his whole body was thrown backward, his leg would remain planted. It was basically impossible for him to lose. Some would call it cowardice, but all he had to do now was keep going and watch these fools fall. This was his revenge for what his father had done to him. His thoughts darkly cut off abruptly by Gunter's fist, flying straight at his head at full speed. Velvet freezes without even processing it. I think he forgot that if his head explodes, his body shuts down, and bang, a clean hit makes his skull fly off. Gunter asks if that means he won the guy's head. It literally flew off, but the referee announces that Velvet didn't move a single foot. So the duel isn't over. Gunter flexes his arms, smiling because this duel is going to be a feast, while the vampire starts to recover, admitting that was dangerous, but saying the game is over no matter how much he tries. That idiot Olivia in the end will never beat him. But let's go back to the moment they were implanting steel rods inside Gunter's mouth. It was to help him withstand the blows. He said the taste was disgusting and weird, but Arian told him not to worry, that the duel wouldn't last that long. In fact, it would end much sooner than he thought, so he better win. When Velvet's punch lands squarely, Gunter wonders why he hears a sharp metallic screech. The referee declares that Gunter didn't move a single step, so now it's his turn again. Gunter throws an uppercut, landing squarely on Velvet's jaw and blowing off his head. Once again, the vampire shudders a bit, but still doesn't move from his spot. Velvet recovers, growling that Gunter is a bastard, and hits him with a punch. Patrick asks the queen if she really thinks Gunter can win, and she looks unsure. Velvet's head flies off again, and he almost takes a step back. He realizes this is getting dangerous. That strange knight was much stronger than he imagined. His whole body pushed backward by a simple hit to the head. Velvet tries to find the right angle to throw his own punches, but strangely, he feels like he's not doing any real damage. The word defeat floats in his mind. As true royalty, he couldn't lose to this filthy woman. As unworthy of any title. With a twisted expression, he yells for them to stop laughing. He was the only worthy vessel to become king, only him, the only truly worthy of that position. Gunter, meanwhile, chews the steel rods in his mouth, murmuring that he doesn't care. Velvet sinks deeper into madness, ranting that that woman's father stole everything from him, and as if that wasn't enough, he even cut off his arms, preventing him from trying again. Gunter just says that guy's family is completely crazy. Velvet rebuilds another arm, declaring he will prove that fakes never win, and goes for another punch. But this time, Gunter dodges. Velvet is stunned, and Gunter counterattacks with a direct hit to the chest. Everyone is left speechless. The queen is left without words, while Velvet flies out, stumbles to his feet, shouting that the bastard dodged and threw all his honor in the trash. Gunter replies that if Velvet is fighting with a bunch of limbs attached to his back, what right does he have to talk about honor? Besides, he only kept going because of the bald guy, but now he's tired. Velvet tries to restore his arm, but realizes he can't. Just like Gunter had done with Evelyn in the circle, he had damaged Velvet's heart, making complete regeneration impossible at that moment. Gunter grabs him by the neck in memory and says that the real fight is about to begin. But again, Velvet insists that in the name of his noble family, he has another proposal. Gunter's response is to send him to hell and blow his head off again. Probably at the moment, Gunter saw Velvet merging 15 arms into one. He gave up on playing fair because surviving is the priority for him. The Queen, however, obviously wants to know why he dodged even if he died. Even if humanity perished, he couldn't act that way while representing the royal family. She screams desperately that he's a bastard, but Patrick intervenes, telling her to calm down. He really saw him dodge. He says what really happened was that Gunter took the punch head-on, and with the fourth hit finished off Velvet. Everyone else nods yes, that fourth punch was solid. He also held up well against the third. Patrick even rewrites the record, tearing out the old page and scribbling. After Gunter received the third punch, he counterattacked with the fourth and ended the vampire. Patrick says that is the perfect outcome. Then he turns and declares that yes, that is the truth. Now the Queen, still confused, murmurs that apparently she was the one who won with honor, and he nods, telling her she kept her honor intact. And there she is, smiling like a fool, celebrating, saying, the victory is hers, everyone. Honoring the great Queen. Meanwhile, Gunter keeps smashing Velvet against the ground, the vampire begging him to stop, asking how much longer he's going to keep hitting someone without arms. Doesn't he feel pity for a defenseless enemy? Gunter calmly responds that he will simply keep hitting until dawn, nothing more, nothing less. Velvet desperately pleads to wait a moment, says he has a proposal. He just wants the guy to listen, but Gunter almost shoves his face down again, until Velvet suddenly drops the name Julius, the last pureblood vampire. He knows everyone must be looking for him, and Velvet claims he knows where Julius is hiding. If they forgive him, he can lead them there, because once Julius dies, they won't have to fight any more vampires. Humanity would be victorious. Gunter says he's not stupid. If Julius dies, Belvedere dies too, so there's no way he'd do that. But the vampire explains that Gunter doesn't understand how vampire promises work. He swore to Julius he would deliver the immortal night. That means whatever happens between the two is not his responsibility. They say it's a big deal for Gunter. Gunter pauses, saying it's tempting. But what if he takes a few more hits before dawn? Velvet shouts, and with that, the sun is already up. Arian insists, wanting to know if he will really guide them to chain Julius. Velvet says yes, but in truth his plan is to take the immortal night straight to Julius. The only thing he asks is to be treated like the last surviving royal. They should remove all his chains and shackles because it's dishonorable. The protagonist mocks, saying this bastard dares to talk about honor after everything he's done. Sounds like he's begging for another beating. Velvet shrinks back at the raised fist, then decides to shut up. Arian says he can't trust him. After all, if Julius dies, Velvet dies too, so that promise doesn't even make sense. What he really wants to know is if Velvet didn't want to destroy humanity, why did he become a vampire? Thor, strangely, the face, calls her, is a very curious girl, but it's a shame that royalty has always kept so many secrets. Hunter just raises his arm, saying clearly he's playing with words and deserves another hit. Velvet tells him to stop the threats, insisting the only thing he wants is to be forgiven in exchange for leading them to Julius. That's the deal. Later, walking through the halls, Arian says it would be a great advantage to know where Julius is and finish him off. The only problem is that before that, there's a lot to prepare, and just then his nose starts bleeding. Not just bleeding, but a mix of purple and red, and he begins to collapse to the ground. We had forgotten what was said in the first chapter. She is a living battery, which means her life force is being drained. The others rush to charge her. Her whole body reddened, she can barely breathe, her temperature is scorching, and strange marks cover her skin. It is then that Gunter notices she has a massive implants along her back. He asks what that is, and the bald man explains that it is the result of having become a human generator. A cocktail of drugs, potions, and all kinds of substances were pumped into her body. Those devices on her back work to detoxify the damage caused by those drugs, allowing energy to flow through the transmitter. Also, her intestines and organs are all compressed by the machinery. The only thing she can eat are certain types of soup. Gunter murmurs that the fact she is still alive is already a miracle. Reiner adds that this is why Arian is unique. No normal person could have survived all this, and yet she endured days and nights in that body. Still, Gunter wants to know why she fainted, and if she will recover. The bald man says they first need to understand the source of the body's heat, what exactly is happening. Then he asks Gunter if he is worried about her. Gunter shouts that he is not worried at all because if she dies, he dies too. The bald man immediately realizes that he actually doesn't care about her. One of the plague doctors reports that her pulse finally returned to normal, but they still don't know the cause of the collapse, and all they can do is wait and watch. Meanwhile, Gunter is there connected, saying there is a problem. He knows she is unconscious, but the bar on her arm is not rising. The bald man tells him he should be ashamed of connecting to someone who is unconscious. Gunter responds sharply that no way, and if she suddenly dies, it is then that the bald man explains that just like him, she has to be functioning at high efficiency. For the transmission to work, the worse her body is, the weaker the output becomes, until eventually it shuts down completely. The protagonist asks if there is no way for him to charge himself, and the bald man admits that for now there isn't. The only advantage is that the bar is not going down, which means that Gunter, they will have to remain connected 100% with her just to stay alive. But the bald man warns that he is not even sure that is possible, that if her condition worsens a little and he keeps draining energy, the battery could fall to zero even while connected. Gunter murmurs that this is a death worse than fighting vampires. The bald man agrees, saying that since Gunter can't leave, he better stay and take care of her, while the others mobilize to find another solution. Gunter has no other choice. He is trapped by her side, just watching. Every moment, the counter on his arm showed less than an hour of life. He notices. She moans, soaked in sweat, clearly in unbearable pain. They tell him to use a cloth to wipe her sweat, but he complains that it is a bother. Still, he notices her face so small. Her nose, her mouth, even her hands were tiny, and yet, she endured the agony of having twisted organs and her whole body modified. He simply cannot understand why she is going through all this. At that moment, Audrey opens the door with more water and sees Gunter, holding Arian's hand. She apologizes for interrupting a romantic moment. He shouts that he was just wiping her sweat. Audrey tells him to enjoy in his time and closes the door. Suddenly desperate, he shouts for her to come back. Vero, night falls and he is still there, wiping sweat. He wonders aloud if she, who always acted so strong as if nothing affected her, is really going to faint by his side, so he stays sitting, watching her as the hours pass. And then he remembers her words that she hoped to see him tomorrow. Gunter gets sentimental, clasps his hands, looks at her intently, and admits that of everyone, she is the only one he also wanted to see tomorrow. But then the sun rises and he panics. He had prayed, wiped the sweat all night, but still hadn't woken up. Worse yet, even with the timer connected to his arm, it's counting down, only accepted because the bald man was already prepared, saying that creating a human generator doesn't take that long. He demands an explanation, and Reiner tells him that the human generator of Arian can no longer function before it shuts down completely. They will mobilize everyone to create a new one. They load it while warning to handle it carefully. Gunter follows closely until they stop in front of a tombstone covered with names. He asks what it is. Reiner explains that it is the list of all those who sacrificed themselves trying to become a generator and failed. Gunter curses, saying it's a disgrace that so many people died just to have their names engraved in a forgotten place. The bald man explains that not everyone trusted the plan. At that moment, 2 plague doctors enter, announcing that the test is ready and the candidate prepared. Gunter immediately protests, saying that with only one it's impossible. There's no way it will work. Vero Reiner says they don't have enough materials. There's only enough to try with one person. Gunter frowns, saying it's suspicious that only one person volunteered, who is the idiot this time, and indeed from the start of the speech. Gunter already knows. Reiner admits that all his life he has been indecisive. Just like when he couldn't kill that vampire. Time and again he made the wrong decisions, because he never had the determination and he's tired of running like this. He wants to protect Audrey, so this time he will do what he has to do. He will be the one to become a human generator to save Gunter. And it seems our guy only agreed because the bald guy was already prepared, saying creating a human generator doesn't take that long. Even if it doesn't work 100%, the moment everything is installed, it could still generate some energy. Gunter asks, what happens if it doesn't work at all? Reiner just tells him not to worry, everything will be fine. The doctors take him away, saying the operation is about to restart as they lead him. Reiner asks Gunter to please keep all this a secret from Audrey. Next scene, his veins and nails are turning blue and he scratches himself, writhing in pain on the table. Gunter demands to know what is happening, and the others explain it is an absolute success. The first operation worked, and now they will move on to the second. Gunter murmurs, good, it's not over yet. He asks the bald man how it feels to be a blue bald man. Reiner replies, it's terrible. At least the first phase only had a 50% success rate, and since he's still alive, that counts as a good result. The protagonist praises him, telling him to keep that positive attitude. Reiner then wants to know how much energy he has, looks at his wrist and says, not much. Barely a flicker. He tries to sit up, saying he has something to confess. While still conscious, Gunter growls that he doesn't want to hear deathbed secrets, but Reiner continues anyway. Audrey is not his biological daughter. Gunter is surprised, saying that explains why they seem so different. But if she's not his, where did she come from? Reiner explains that he had been abandoned by the mercenaries with whom he spent his whole life. After losing everything, he lived on the streets, and what really broke him was not losing material things, but being betrayed by the people he had considered his family. They left him to die in the streets, until someone offered him a piece of bread. That person was Audrey. He remembers her small, dirty hand offering him half a loaf. She had also been abandoned by her parents, but he thanks them because it meant he could become her father, just as they abandoned her, and he was able to rebuild his life thanks to Audrey. He hopes that in this cruel and relentless world, eventually, She too finds someone who can heal her wounds. Gunter becomes serious at that. The doctors enter and announce that the second operation, the stretcher, is about to begin being pushed into a room with strange tools and bubbling vats while Reiner screams in pain. From a distance, Audrey is by a window, as if sensing something. Gunter, still connected to Arian, says that in this world, nothing is more valuable than staying alive. His energy runs out and he shuts down, and then, oh no, the scene changes to the tombstone. Someone arrives and carves a new name. Reiner, 12 days, 5 hours, and 4 minutes. That was the time he lasted as a human battery, officially recorded as a failure. But he still managed to provide energy for 12 days. Some called it a miracle. Others said it was pure willpower. And on the 11th night, another miracle happened. Arian suddenly woke from her deep coma. She was severely weakened, but the next day, she could already function again as a generator. At the moment when Reiner saw her standing, his own health collapsed even faster. Maybe at that moment he felt relieved finally. Lying in bed, he tells his daughter he never imagined that living could be so painful. But still, in this cruel and relentless world, she had come to him and had become his light. He thanks his daughter, who smiles at him, and memories flood his mind. The small campfire, her words, her cleaning his bald head, them dancing, and in the end he tells her she was always too beautiful. Then he dies. Here comes the worst part of all. Audrey didn't even cry when she saw him die. She said it had been his choice, and that in the end it was thanks to her father that Gunter had stayed alive until Arian woke up. She said she would have done the same. But of course, later that night at the house, they heard him crying. The next day, Gunter is beside Arian, asking if tomorrow they will finally leave to kill Julius. He had been going through a lot. She answers yes, that their time is up, and that Velvet warned it would take several weeks to reach him. Gunter comments that finally everything is about to end, but she seemed strangely calm. Not only had she been close to dying, but the bald one had also died. She closes the book in her hands and says she would never have started any of this if she hadn't been prepared. Gunter nods, saying he understands. Still, it's good to see her face again. He just warns her not to faint suddenly again. She laughs, and a little later, he is lying in bed while she sits silently beside him. Looking at the door, someone was about to enter, but suddenly, Gunter already had his sword at the intruder's throat, demanding to know why the queen's lackey was there. At that hour, the man laughs, saying that Gunter, he really is a tough guy, but assures him not to worry. He is not there on the queen's orders. He came to offer his condolences and to say that he also owed a lot to Captain Reiner. Gunter glares at him, pointing out that he acts very differently when he is near the queen. The man replies that people are defined by the positions they hold, and that he will take that as a compliment. He heard they leave tomorrow. But before Gunter leaves, there is someone who desperately wants to see him. Gunter says he will wake Arian so they can go together. But the man replies that no one else can accompany him. Gunter explains about the timer that he needs to stay close to her so his battery doesn't run out. Was this meeting really more important than saving humanity? Patrick replies, yes, the person who wants to see him is more important than the future of humanity. He is humanity itself, and history itself is the king of kings. The ancestor of humanity. Doesn't Gunter feel curious about what really happened between humans and vampires? If he goes now, he will learn everything while they go down some stairs. Gunter growls about that king of kings nonsense. How many kings did this nation have? It seems he runs into more people calling themselves king than normal people. Patrick tells him to calm down, assuring him that this person is different, that he truly is the real king who once ruled humanity. He was the very incarnation of truth. Gunter asks if Patrick doesn't worship the queen. Patrick laughs and asks if he really thinks she looks like someone capable of leading anyone. Gunter calls him a funny bastard, and Patrick thanks him. They arrive at a luxurious but somewhat abandoned place, and Gunter remembers it looks like the pillar-supported structure he saw during the battle. He wants to know why they are there. Patrick explains that this place is far below, a site that technically doesn't exist in history, built with expensive marble, onyx, and countless jewels. The air circulation was so perfect that no one would notice it was underground. They even had fresh water, with enough rooms for hundreds of servants. In fact, the entire city known as Bahal was built to serve this place. Gunter demands to know exactly what this site is. Patrick explains it was where the kings of the past went before dying, a place where they could live eternal lives. It was called the Paradise of the Kings. Gunter still doesn't understand, saying none of this makes sense, but Patrick just tells him to keep going. They walk through more hallways, and Gunter sees strange paintings, scenes that look like vampire transformations, until finally, in one of the rooms, he comes face to face with a guillotine, a huge blade fixed in place, and Patrick says Julius belonged to this place. Gunter asks if that is the pureblood vampire, and Patrick explains that yes, a being that survives only on pure human blood, burned by sunlight, and killed only if the heart is destroyed. For vampires, blood was the source of strength and power, but pureblood vampires were creatures that had existed since the beginning, and didn't even need to drink blood. They could live eternally, consuming anything. Noble, marvelous beings that until then existed only in mythology. But eventually they discovered something incredible about their pure blood. Just as human blood gave strength to vampires, the blood of a pureblood could give strength to a human. Gunter doesn't understand, and Patrick explains that yes, their pure blood could grant youth and extend human life. Basically, one could live forever if they kept drinking it. Gunter asks if everyone in that place survived on that. Patrick explains that not just a few selected ones, the king and a handful of servants, because the blood of a pureblood was like a mirage. The moment it left the body, it disintegrated. That's why to have fresh blood available, they needed to obtain it at any time. Julius was imprisoned there and constantly beheaded so he wouldn't remain conscious, supplying blood to humans for 950 years. Gunter murmurs that now he doesn't even know who the real monster is. Patrick says it was all worth it. Thanks to Julius, humanity entered its greatest era of prosperity. The royal family gained influence over politics and administration, and any king of a land approaching death was sent to that place. He was judged by the kings below, who decided if his life was valuable enough to be made eternal. Knowing this judgment, each king strove to create the best possible kingdom and achieve immortality. The one who created this process was Hound, the first of all kings. Gunter mocks, saying that first of all, that royal family lost their minds. Second, someone really ruined everything, since clearly their plan didn't last forever. He wants to know what happened. Patrick explains it was 41 years ago when a human granted Julius freedom and escaped with him. Gunter praises him. Finally, a human with conscience. But Patrick shakes his head, saying that makes no sense. Conscience is exactly what he didn't have. Just imagine the suffering unleashed by the freedom that human gave that vampire. Of course, the moment Julius left, that underground city began to collapse. The source of eternal life was cut off, and the people there aged decades all at once. Everyone died grotesque deaths, one after another, starting with the first king, and shortly after, the second, called Browse, also died, but the last hope of all, the one who had dedicated thousands of years to humanity, the true king of kings, was still alive, and now it was time for Gunter to face humanity's very own history, face to face, inside a room full of books. Someone says they have been watching him for a long time, born from death, infinitely desiring life. Alive, but not completely dead, but not entirely alive either. Existing right on the line between life and death, the so-called Death Knight welcomes the protagonist to his palace. He immediately says this weirdo is ugly as hell, to which the guy replies he could say the same about him. Our guy is now curious about what this watching him for so long is about. For someone who is supposed to be a great king, he seems to lead a pretty quiet life. The king explains that he doesn't just watch him, but follows everyone's life. When they were born, who raised them, what kind of lives they had, and how those lives ended. That is his power, to know and understand everything within this kingdom. Gunter directly calls him a degenerate and then presses him. If he already knows everything, why does he want to see him? With that strange expression on his face, the king takes a book and says, "This is the story of Isabella Hunt and her life. She was a woman who was about to become the great queen of this kingdom, but she gave up the throne and chose to flee with Julius. The book is still unfinished, and one of my greatest wishes is to complete it. That's why I want you to ask Julius about her, what he promised her to make her want to destroy humanity." Gunter simply shrugs, saying it's no mystery to him. The guy probably wants to end humanity, after having his head cut off for 950 years. But the king explains that pureblood vampires don't feel hatred. For someone like Julius, 950 years isn't even that long. The real reason he wants to kill humanity is because of a promise he made to Isabella Hunt. She gave up eternal life and the throne just to tell him something. What was that? The king still doesn't know. What interests him is to see what choice Gunter makes. If he decides to live or die, after all, he can continue as human or as monster. He could even pursue eternal life, and since he loves to survive, that is something that piques the king's curiosity. Gunter doesn't answer. The truth is that until now, he has always been quite questionable when survival was at stake, but here we are. Golden weapon loaded, sword drawn. Arian says the time has come, and he just asks if she has been sleeping well. She says yes and thanks him, and he just tells the damn girl to snore a little quieter, blushing. She ignores the tease and mentions that Velvet is coming with them, which means that Julius will know their location at any moment. Gunter sees it as a double-edged sword. Arian also points out that the moment they leave this castle, every monster out there will start hunting them. Risky, of course, but better than turning this place into a battlefield while they are still inside. And with that, they are already on the bridge when someone calls Gunter. It's Audrey, apparently joining them too. She's all cheerful, a clear sign she's going to die. He notices she cut her hair, and she says she just wanted a little change. He looks exactly the same, but well, curiously. For someone who normally doesn't care about others, our protagonist is paying a lot of attention. He asks how Velvet is, and she explains that obviously she has been avoiding her at the mansion. When she goes to check, The guy is screaming, saying he is crazy for treating royalty that way, but Gunter just shows his fist, and the man immediately falls silent. Then the doctors say it's time to break the carriage. It begins to move forward, while Gunter remembers the king's words, live, die, remain a monster or pursue immortality. He was curious about all that. With a small laugh, he moves forward, while from one of the distant towers, the queen watches before turning away. At the same time, Julius waits calmly at home, motionless as always, for the two who are on their way. One step forward and we move to the next chapter, where someone is already shouting, wanting to know what this 582 kilometers is about. Velvet says that is the distance they are from Julius. The protagonist responds, what kind of nonsense is that? These vampires don't know how to establish bases in accessible places. Not to mention, this carriage will travel, what? 50 kilometers in total. At this rate, they will arrive in a month. Doesn't that bastard Julius? We know they are coming for him. Why doesn't he run well in their direction and give them a hand? Velvet replies that he said Julius should run, but really? He simply doesn't understand the complexity of a pureblood vampire. He has always been in the same place, except for that time he killed the king, and there he will stay. The protagonist wants to know if there is any treasure there or something like that. Velvet tells him no, that is where Isabella Hunt was buried. That immediately clicks for Gunter. That's the one the king talked about. The one who freed Julius from that place at the same time. Another girl clings to him, clearly exhausted. The journey barely started and she is already asleep. Meanwhile, someone else points at him saying something beautiful is happening. He tells him to leave her alone, since the poor girl simply fainted. She turns her head away from him. Suddenly, the horse jumps, and Audrey hits her back against the wall, all twisted, but once again sees Gunter protecting Arian. He murmured that he had to protect her, that if she died, he died. Sometime later, the coachman warns them to look ahead. The place is covered with countless corpses, a pile of dead bodies. He tells them to move aside. As they approach, the smell of blood becomes intense. It's fresh, but the strangest thing is that the bodies have no bites or cuts. They seem crushed. Gunter warns everyone to stay alert, because there is a vampire nearby. He also says to collect usable bodies. Maybe they can make a weapon for him. It is then that Audrey notices something strange. All the corpses have no hands. From inside the carriage, Velvet says, now this will get interesting, since they have entered that person's domain. She asks whose, and he explains that among the high-ranking vampires, there are two rare and crazy ones. One of them is the Nash, the Handless, a disgusting ex-slave whom everyone hated dealing with, but something was undeniable. He had a true talent for killing. Velvet wants to see how many of them survive this fight, and don't forget they still have 582 kilometers to travel. Moving forward, Audrey is sure this path to Julius won't be easy. They will have to avoid fights as much as possible. And one of the most important things, as Arian says, is to protect the incredible black carriage. It's basically a simplified Bahal laboratory. Medicines, parts of Gunter's weapons, they can make anything inside there. Obviously, it must remain intact. However, Gunter says the real priority is her, not the carriage. And as always, Audrey is there watching this whole romance unfold. The protagonist thanks her, anyway, saying it's easier to protect this little carriage than to resist a whole army. At that moment, someone points out, the thing is designed to withstand shockwaves when suddenly someone shouts ambush. Looking back, a plague doctor runs to warn them. A vampire is approaching. Gunter is already moving toward him, but they stop telling the others to prepare. From afar, another carriage comes flying, crashing into them from behind. And right after, something else falls and destroys everything. Seeing that, Gunter wonders what kind of vampire the hell that was. It looked like a giant hand, and there it was, standing on all the fingers saying 30. That was today's goal. He had to reach 30. Gunter can only think about how disgusting the creature is. The hair. Black at least means it is a low-class vampire. He immediately focuses because the thing is coming towards him, waving 5 or 6 hands, and murmurs that there are countless ways to kill something so weak. He first cuts towards the fingers while the guy comments that his strength feels strange, as if he were not human, but no one can hurt this body that Dash has given him, until the sword pierces, cutting the hand and tearing both at the same time. But another fist comes from the side and throws him away. The creature curiously starts celebrating, boasting that he already has 2 for today. But the celebration is interrupted when Gunter approaches him in a second. He realizes that these bastards are unpredictable, just like a human hand. The problem is that they are huge. Then he sees 3 of them heading towards the damn carriage. The horses run at full speed, the coachman shouting to go faster because more spawn are approaching from behind. Another one comes down to crush him, but Gunter is there again, cutting through. He asks how many vampires there are, and someone answers about 30. Seeing the guy holding a crossbow, Gunter asks if the fool really thinks that thing is going to kill vampires. If he really wants to live, he should drop that useless weapon and take a steel chain instead. One of the plague doctors begs for mercy, but his head is crushed by one of those giant hands. And the creepy vampire, using his huge thumb, grabs the tiny hand of the man and announces that this is the 12th of the day, still far from his goal. He looks sideways, sees the carriage passing, and orders everyone to follow it. Fingers run along the sides, others come from different angles while Gunter cuts in all directions, grabs some chains, damn it, and swings them, destroying everything at the same time. He stays anchored to the carriage. He propels himself forward, dodges another blow, wraps the chain around his arm, uses it to launch himself forward, cutting 3, maybe 4 more in a flash. The doctors inside are stunned that someone can cause such destruction. With just a chain, he really is a monster. They think this is going to be easy, and suddenly he is pulled away. Someone is right there when apparently it is just a stone throne that breaks through the window. What the hell? The bastard declares the next one is coming. The shot is fired. Gunter sees it heading straight for the carriage, tries to intercept it, swings his sword against the stone, but it shatters. Blood. The next chapter opens with that same moment. His slash missed, and damn it, the horses were torn in half when the first collapsed. The others stumbled, forcing the carriage to stop. He asks quickly if everyone inside is okay, and they answer yes. The problem is obviously the horses are no longer there, so they are screwed. Another shot almost hits Gunter as he moves aside, seeing the bastards up there in the mountains. The group tries to lift the horses again, but he knows there is no time. The only option is to send everything rolling downhill. The people inside scream, demanding to know what he plans to do, asking if he is about to throw them all down the mountain. He just says yes and tells them to hold on, then pushes hard, jumps on top, and they launch crashing at full speed. Poor Ariane drools everywhere while he murmurs that this trip is much faster than he expected. The real problem, a huge rock is right ahead. A doctor shouts that they are all going to die. Gunter tells him to calm down, leans to one side, kicks to maneuver. They barely avoid it, grazing the edge, but then everything goes up the slope, and everyone screams in panic. That is when Audrey sees a bridge right beside them. The idea is obvious. Cross that damn thing and cut in the path of the vampires before they can catch them. The problem was they were flying toward the cliff at full speed, and no one was going to survive that. Ariane, of course, screams her name again, begging her to stop this, while our guy goes all Spider-Man, pulling the chains to try to slow down the runaway ride. Obviously, there was no way he could actually succeed, right? Everyone was about to die, no? Although knowing this story, it really likes to kill characters. But somehow they stop just at the edge, barely. So there it is, dragging everyone back with the chains. I was about to say everyone inside was lazy, but they're not. Everyone at the back is helping. That's when one of the doctors warns them that the damn little hands are lunging desperately, at least 2 fingers charging. They at least manage to cross before the fight starts, and now it's time to take down the bridge. Gunter runs forward and drives his sword into a pillar, then into another, but somehow the bridge holds. The pillars must be anchored deep into the ground. Someone yells to destroy the land along with them. The problem is he's running out of energy, and this has to be resolved with one last strike. He stretches out his arm, the creatures charge, crossing the bridge, and he hits the ground. Everything collapses. The damn little hands fall into the water, dragged by the current. Ariane calls him immediately, but he insists there's no way in hell he's going to die here, and then he faints. Meanwhile, the remaining hands crawl out of the forest, and those made of that special blood burn, leaving only the one that controlled them. They retreat to a cave carrying some fists, armed, and report directly to the Lord of Nash. He says it was decent work, but because it seems no one met the quota today, and yes, we can already see what it is. A disgusting ex-slave whose hands were cut off. There's no way it wasn't something unfair and cruel. Now he wants an army of hands to take revenge. The subordinate apologizes, explaining that a half-monster knight got in their way. They lost many comrades and couldn't reach the target. Dinesh demands to know what nonsense that is. How could they fail with the perfect bodies they were given for not meeting the objective? Each of them will pay with their lives. The vampire begs for forgiveness while Dinesh declares he will take all their hearts. The poor wretches in the back sob, promising they will double the quota next time. But suddenly, Dinesh starts murmuring something about the fist. I have no idea what it means, but he asks if the guy is sure. The man swears he saw it. Dinesh thanks him and says this time they will be forgiven. Everyone falls to their knees, euphoric to live one more day. Drooling in his madness, Nash asks what the mission will be next time. He looks at a single hand and his expression changes. He declares 10,000. Apparently, the hand itself dictates the mission. I don't fully understand it, but eventually this story ties everything together. At least it never leaves loose ends. Back with the carriages, the group advances along the edge of the forest. The protagonist hits Velvet, asking if she's okay. Velvet only replies that there are still 578 kilometers left at this pace. Unless they fall into some portal, it's never going to happen. After all that crazy mountain descent at breakneck speed, They've only covered 4 kilometers. Ariane, at least, is grateful they protected the carriage, but Velvet from inside says she doubts it. At this rate, they won't even reach 100 kilometers. They'll have to push themselves much harder. If the head of the Death Knight is going to stay calm, he laughs like a deranged psychopath, while Gunter admits it's annoying. But the bastard tells the truth. At this pace, there's no way they'll survive 100 kilometers. The horses are the biggest problem. They're incredibly vulnerable and die too easily. And that's when Audrey offers the strangest thing. They have many corpses. So why the hell do they want to make a horse instead of building one from scratch, right? It seems they want to turn Gunter into a horse, and he is definitely not happy about it at all. Strangely, Arian admits it's true. Turning him into a great stallion would make things much easier. The problem, obviously, is how long it takes to achieve it. Audrey intervenes, telling him to relax, that she will take care of it quickly. Seriously, no one is going to ask the poor guy if he even wants to become a horse. The poor bastard is about to turn into a centaur-looking disaster. You are listening to the best manhwa of 2025. Thanks. While they move at 5 kilometers per hour, meanwhile, the little hands desperately launch themselves to find that guy and fulfill their quota. They are about to crash again, although technically from behind this time. Since the spawn approach from the rear, Gunter is half-modified, now with weird things embedded in him, steel rods everywhere. He tells Audrey to hurry, but she insists she's already doing her best, trying to finish as fast as possible. Suddenly, one of the hands jumps screaming from 10,000 punches aimed at Gunter. He returns the look, and I don't even know what happened. He blocked it or raised a huge horse kick. Even the demon is surprised, asking what the hell was that. The thing is crushed, stomped flat. Damn it. Those really are some muscular horse legs. The design is crazy, and Gunter actually likes it, saying with this, he feels he can crush everything. Arian is about to tell him to buy time, but instead sees him running like a madman, cutting everything. Demanding to know who has been talking about killing him, he crushes the face of one of the creatures with that huge horse helmet, spins, and almost kills Arian by accident. She yells at him to watch his side. The monsters are already scattering, fleeing, terrified. They scream there's a monster here, asking for help. Gunter wonders aloud if he really looks that horrible. All this damn mess was too tedious. Time to get back on track, but just as Arian is about to say, maybe today, things will stay calm, a strange roar echoes. Nash is near, murmuring that 10,000 really is a lot, but they are only making things worse for themselves by trying to flee. He will go after one of his followers, asks what the quota is, and then pierces an arm right through him, adding he will take his heart as a bonus. Gunter doesn't waste time, he's already on top of him. In a second, the strike of his sword almost reaching the guy's eye. But before that, we saw him asking Velvet why this crazy guy collects fists. Velvet explained it was nothing mystical. It came from a man in some rural area who forced slaves to work on a peculiar plantation. If they didn't meet the quota, he cut off their hands. It didn't matter if they were children, elderly, women, men. They all died back then. Velvet swears if he had been king, something like that would never have happened. But Nesh is the kind of twisted person who whispers corruption in children's ears. He looks at that hand. It's severed, as if hearing a disturbing voice. Velvet always wondered who originally that strange hand belonged to, and then Gunter's strike, the one that almost connected, is stopped by a sword. In Ishmak saying he can't end like this. The slaves are no longer here. Then he throws a blow to Gunter's chest, declaring that now it's his turn to settle this. A strange vampiric energy begins swirling around his body, transforming him into a kind of grotesque megazord covered in giant hands, warns that today he will take Gunter's hand and fist. It's time to dance. Gunter boldly replies, many have tried to kill him, but none have succeeded. He has faced much stronger enemies and survived. Charges forward, sword ready. Dinesh simply declares, charges forward with sword ready. Dinesh simply declares that today will be the boy's first death, smashing a huge fist toward him. But the next chapter opens with Arian saying that vampire blood almost has a will of its own. Gunter realizes they are like tools with consciousness, and she explains that's why they get stronger when pain and willpower also grow. Then she asks what kind of pain would cause the greatest suffering to a human. Audrey says that probably being burned alive must be one of the worst. Maybe also having absolutely no hope in life would be unbearable. And apparently this is when Reiner was still alive, because he says he once heard a scream that didn't sound human at all. It didn't come from the throat. It was as if it came from the deepest part of the heart. Something animal came from a mother who had just lost her child. In an accident, the three fall silent, and he says that made him think again that maybe the most painful thing for a human is a parent's heart, one forced to watch a child die. Yes, and of course, Daphne, the one with cut hands, saw her own child lose his hands and die right in front of her. That kind of thing can really turn anyone into a villain, and now here he is using every last drop of his strength to smash Gunter's arm. Gunter, of course, realizes it's not going to be that simple. Dinesh seems almost disappointed, saying Gunter destroyed the fist but had to take it. How is he supposed to meet his quota? Now he needs to control his legs better. But in the middle of his thought, Gunter interrupts him. With a horse kick, he slams him, then unleashes another hit, and another, and another. The boy's executing a full Mortal Kombat combo, and yet the monster remains intact, asking if that's really all the rage he has. The protagonist doesn't understand how this creature hasn't hesitated for a second or even blinked. Strangely, as Dinesh approaches, Gunter feels something unsettling. He knows no enemy, lacks weakness, but for some reason he feels intimidated. Deep down, he knows he can't win against this guy right now. It's then when someone shouts from behind, telling him they've already finished packing everything, that there's no reason to keep fighting, and he looks at her, remembering he's always been the one who chooses survival above anything else. With horse legs, he runs faster than anyone, sprinting at full speed, but of course, an attack pierces his chest, opening a crater from afar. Dinesh shouts that he still has 10,000 fists to collect. So where does Gunter think he's going then? Bam! It seems he hit him in the head. Blood runs down, and he wonders if he really hit his face. How exactly did he reach him? There's an eye on the ground. Only half his head was torn off, but the brain remains intact. The problem is his other eye is swollen and closed, leaving him blind in front. He can feel something charging at him, but there's no way he's dying like this, so he jumps, shouting that no one is capable of killing him, and throws a punch back. But he doesn't even know what he's aiming at, and so the next chapter begins. Because every time something happens, the story turns. Now we see Gunter in a pool of blood surrounded by corpses. A fallen man asks why the boy keeps fighting. Kill or die changes nothing in his life, so why fight so hard to escape death for real? Does he think he'll someday find a place to belong, or maybe he clings to the illusion that there's some way to get revenge on the parents who abandoned him in the trash? Gunter yells at him to shut up, but the man just says he's a whining child who has never felt love. There's no place for him in this world. No matter how hard he tries, no one has ever loved him. With that, Gunter hits him, and we return to the moment of impact. His attack almost hits someone, who shouts, grabs him, and tells him he doesn't need to fight anymore. He's left confused, wondering how he can still be alive like this when he can't see. She tells him she will be his eyes. She climbs on his back, and together, they charge forward at full speed. The danger, however, is that the stones at her head could pierce him, and if that happens, she would suffer too. But when the first one comes, she yells at him to duck, and they dodge once again. Then Dinesh jumps and almost crushes them. Right there, they run in panic. Gunter doesn't understand what the hell this fight is. How is he supposed to predict anything when he can't see anything? You wonder if maybe this is how he will die, without understanding a single thing about what's happening around him. Maybe this was the horrible death he had always been waiting for, but someone grabs him, telling him that this time he's not alone, that he has nothing to worry about. She tells him to dodge left, and he simply follows her words, moving forward blindly. She warns that the carriage is 5 meters to the left, that he just needs to go a little further and plant his foot forward. He screams desperately, and from Dinesh's perspective, they are already far away in the distance, fleeing. Dinesh murmurs that the bastard really is slippery, and now it's complicated. He needs 10,000 punches to meet his quota. Still, it's okay. He will chase him every night until he wears him out. In the end, he will be the one to kill him. The scene changes to the next day. They finally stop to rest a bit and check their supplies. Audrey asks what the next part of the plan is, because unfortunately the boy's head is still open. Gunter, however, says to let Aryan rest a bit, who had fainted. And then he asks, how the hell do you fix someone's head? He had never thought about it before, but it is possible, right? Of course. The whole damn body is already sewn up. That's what he asks. Can they fix my eyes? I can't fight like this. She tells him something he needs to know. Luckily, his brain wasn't damaged at all, so they just need to put on a new cover. Your face will be fine. The only real problem is the eye. And indeed, when he looks around, everyone is distorted with huge heads. He murmurs that something is wrong, that everyone looks big-headed. Someone explains that the eye is the most complex part to reconstruct in his body, and that in a hurry, this was the best they could do. He yells at her to step aside, saying it looks like a balloon, and she explains that his right eye is closed, not working. Because it was so complex, they had to give up. Specifically, the connections are almost impossible. Too many nerves, too tiny, and with the rudimentary tools they have, there's no way to do it. Right? Gunter demands to know how he's supposed to fight like this. He even suggests taking someone else's eye and putting it on his face. Audrey says maybe they have some spare eyes, they will try their best. She asks if he can see with the one they put on, and he answers, no, not at all, nothing. They try. With another, it seems like it's from a vampire, but the thing spins wildly. They insert another, and he says now he sees 8 of everything, another, nothing. Another, still nothing. She admits they already tried them all and none worked. The real problem is that if they keep delaying there, Dinesh will catch them. Better to keep moving forward and try to find a new eye on the way. So they continue, but even a rabbit jumping nearby almost makes him trip. Some stones fall beside him, and he panics. Someone explains, it's just a small slope. Falling rocks, nothing to fear. She promises she will warn him. Still, he doesn't understand why he looks so upset. He explains, since the moment he was born, He was surrounded by people who wanted to see him dead. He could barely sleep, always afraid of a knife in the back for someone who spent his whole life alert, watching every place, every moment, losing his vision. Feels like the whole world wants to kill him, and he can still see as clearly as day. The only person who wanted to see him dead more than anyone, the one who brought him into this world. And the first to wish for his death, he takes a hand to his face and someone takes it, telling him to calm down. His vision will return soon, but until then, he can trust her that she won't let the darkness come near. She says he can trust her. He responds that he will try. And so look at this romance. I don't know if I like the romance in this story because I'm sure everyone is going to die and get screwed. In other words, it will be more tragedy than romance. Then Arian mentions there is a river ahead. And when Gunter puts on the helmet, he immediately takes it off a little later. They have to jump over some branches and both fall face first right into manure. They keep moving through deserts at night, forests by day, even snow. Always side by side with their hands intertwined. Once again he startles and she calms him down. It's just another rabbit. She looks up and says that the night sky looks beautiful, like pearls scattered across the Black Sea. He replies that maybe it really is beautiful while Audrey watches the two closely. It's then that Audrey calls Gunter, saying she has to ask that she can't keep it to herself anymore. His attitude towards Arian seems to have changed. And indeed, he gets straight to the point. Do you like Arian? He stops to think and suddenly lets out a confused scream. Clearly, Gunter doesn't even know what it means to like someone all his life. He's only killed and been wanted to be killed. He wonders while Arian intervenes, telling Audrey to shut up and asking what kind of weird question that is out of nowhere. Gunter grows somber, saying there's no way to know if he loves someone because he doesn't even understand what love is. Then to Clara, cutting the air with her sword while insisting they are misinterpreting him. He's with Arian because if she dies, he dies. That's the only reason he has to protect her. But if he could keep living without her, honestly, he wouldn't care. Audrey feels uncomfortable standing next to one of the doctors who wants to know why she even asked something like that. The next scene changes to Velvet being fed in Lee acts. He says today's blood was delicious and that he already looks forward to the next meal. Audrey thinks to herself that she never imagined this would be one of the problems. They would have to deal with having to feed this spoiled brat every 2 days. The protagonist murmurs that it's strange he thought high-ranking vampires didn't even need blood. And now, basically, they're dragging a walking blood bag for this guy. Audrey explains they need blood when fighting or to recover. Velvet adds that in war the most important thing is supply. That's why vampires always carried blood packs with them. Audrey finds it strange, but Velvet explains that carrying a living human was too risky. You never know what they might do or when they might die, and even if you fed them, sometimes they just drop dead anyway. That's why they came up with a new method, creating a kind of human food box, a supply that could last quite a while. Audrey demands an explanation, but Velvet refuses, saying their relationship isn't close enough to share everything. Gunter reaches out to him, but this time, Velvet says it's part of the royal family's pride. No matter how much you torture him, he won't say. Plus, he adds, they're nothing more than a death knight and a human battery. He's heard talk about things like that and wants to know how a death knight is really created. He starts asking if they use a certain method, but someone stops him, reminding him that they also have the right to keep their secrets, and that he better not forget the nature of their relationship. Velvet says it's okay, but that catches Gunter's attention. By then, they're already on his 32nd eye transplant. This one in theory should be the best so far. It's the freshest and about the same size as the one he had before. He opens it and sees a little blurry, but much clearer than before. Everyone celebrates, and one of the doctors explains that the donor was named Doric, a 28-year-old man who had been Gunter's friend for 10 years, but had been seriously injured in those battles and died that morning. His dream was to become a hero who could help save the world, and somehow he became part of it all. He asks Gunter if he will remember his name. Gunter simply replies that he will try, maybe sounding like he is trying to be nice. Although he really doesn't care about it, the carriage keeps moving forward, remaining 414 kilometers until reaching their destination slower than they wanted, but at that pace, eventually they would make it. The only problem is that Audrey is starving, bleeding from weakness. The only thing they have eaten these days were 1 or 2 pieces of dried meat. She thinks it's ironic that Velvet, that brat, is eating better than them. They have come too far without resting, and all she wants is to drink, eat a little, and take a hot bath. At that moment, one of the men in the group points to 2 people ahead. They meet a noble-looking man and a peasant woman who say that it has been as a long time since they last saw other humans. They congratulate them for surviving and ask if they want to spend some time in their village. Doesn't sound suspicious at all, right? Arian immediately questions why there is a village in the middle of a battlefield and why those two's clothes are so impeccable, who they really are. The strange couple looks at each other and starts laughing. Clearly, something is not right in their heads. They apologize for not introducing themselves earlier and explain that after countless sacrifices and experiments, they found a way to survive against the vampires. Now, they want to spread their solution to everyone. Audrey wants to know how that works. The man tells her to go to the village and there he will explain everything. They were lucky to find them, but the camera keeps focusing on their disturbing expressions. Luckily, Gunter immediately says they are talking nonsense. Obviously, it's a trick, and why would they believe that accepting would only bring more problems? Arian agrees and asks who wants to move on. Naturally, all the soldiers say it's better to continue straight ahead and not get involved with those strangers. Audrey, however, plays naive and says they are running out of supplies and will starve before arriving. Yes, that is a problem, but she's being naive to believe those people who say they know how to survive against vampires. Now the hungriest members of the group start pointing out that the strangers have clean clothes, they look well fed, and everyone is starving. Gunter tells them to settle for hunting rabbits on the way, but they argue how are so many people supposed to survive with a few rabbits here and there. Then suddenly one of them shouts to get everyone's attention 1 kilometer away. Someone was running toward them, dragging a horde of hands, screaming desperately that it was not enough. Gunter instantly says they have already lost too much time, that it's time to run, but another man says maybe Gunter will manage to escape, although not everyone will get out alive. The suspicious, noble-looking guy intervenes, saying they can head to the town that is just nearby. There no one worries about vampires, they just have to follow him. The people who are against realize they don't have many options, and so they end up passing through a huge door that closes behind them. Curiously, it almost seemed alive somehow. Gunter asks Arian if she saw that. She replies, yes, that thing was not normal at all at the entrance of the cave. The man assures them that vampires don't enter there, and even if they do, they don't have the courage to go deeper. They just need to follow this path to a perfect place full of food. Suspicious, but with no other option, they continue. Inside, the villagers are standing around clapping and shouting, "Well done! Well done!" Gunter finds it strange. Also, the place is full of tunnels and branching paths, making it hard to know exactly where they are headed. It feels almost like an ant colony. Sometime later, they arrive at an area full of water. There are openings in the ceiling that seem made to let sunlight in, and also some patches of crops. The man then reveals a banquet they had prepared. Arian immediately thinks it's suspicious, and Gunter orders that no one eats, since they don't know what everything is made of. But Audrey has already sat down and started eating. At least the man offering the food also tastes it, assuring that everything there is produced in this place. As you can see, they have sunlight coming in, flowing water, they grow staple foods, and even manage to raise small animals. What they need most now are more workers. So he is delighted that so many people have arrived. Arian points out that although the place is large, it doesn't seem natural nor made by humans, and she doesn't see anything special that keeps vampires away. So why aren't they being invaded? The man closes his eyes and says he understands her reaction, that it makes sense. They themselves really don't know why vampires never enter. They simply fled here once and found a space where they could survive. It is Cretan live, the tracks cozy, almost as if Mother Nature herself were embracing them. Then he points to Gunter, saying he must be the Death Knight he's heard about in rumors. Surely they are on their way to kill the pure-blood vampire. But what are the odds of success? Why risk their lives for that? Why not stay here and live in peace? Arian refuses but asks for supplies. One of the plague doctors in front asks, how can the man be so sure they can stay? Another doctor warns him not to say those things, but the man replies that the reason they follow the Death Knight is to kill that vampire so everyone else can live. And yet it's clear. It's a suicide mission. They're barely halfway, and more than 20 have already died. A soldier agrees, saying this place seems perfect to live safely. Another speaks from behind, saying he's not very eager to die and just become another pawn of the Death Knight. This place really seems like a better option. Gunter immediately mutters that getting out of this will be difficult, and asks Arian if she memorized the exit. She says yes, she remembers. But unfortunately, it won't be easy to get the carriage out. He asks how that particular body is doing, and she replies, some parts are already ready. Just then Audrey looks back and sees blocks fitting together, forming a wall. It's like a damn fortnight. Gunter realizes instantly that the whole place is alive, like a real living colony. Or he orders the man guiding them to explain what this place really is, but the guy just keeps smiling with that same creepy face, considering the amount of power at stake here. Gunter is sure this place was built by vampires. Now the real question is this a blood farm? Probably. What else would vampires want from humans that would explain it? No other vampire invades because they know it's probably the territory of a stronger one. That's their bet, make it yours. The man says there's no need to fight vampires outside. They can live here, join the farm, and be at peace. All they have to do is a small thing for the community. When asked what he replies, it's nothing difficult. They just have to follow him and they will learn the secret to staying in this place. Of course the group is suspicious. Gunter hits the carriage, demanding the bastard explain what this place really is. Velvet asks what he's talking about, that he has no idea, they stumbled upon him by chance. Gunter warns him to stop playing dumb or he'll kill him. It's then when Velvet says he's tired of hiding here. He's coming, asks if he remembers when he mentioned that vampires carried small lunchboxes to war. And this was the place where they made those blood boxes that kept vampires full for a while. Now everyone is looking at this giant spider. that looks more like a twisted ant. Everyone asks, "What the hell is that, and why is there a vampire there?" The leader tells them not to be afraid. The hidden vampire there is called Linnell. This whole wonderful place was built with parts of his body. They protect it and keep it warm with all the love they can give. All they need to do in return is show benevolent love to the queen. The soldiers immediately shout at him to stop joking. The vampire's goal is to exterminate humanity, so why would this one be taking care of them? The man calmly says it makes sense, and that's why they chose to live symbiotically. Velvet explains more. She needs the blood of 6 different people, and by draining them all at once and mixing it in her digestive system, she can produce what essentially are her little food boxes. The soldiers look disgusted as the strange mass falls to the ground and demand to know what it is. The man explains it's a blood orb. That thing can be stored for more than 2 months without rotting, and consuming just one means a vampire won't need the blood for 3 months in this place. Everyone works hard so the queen can produce more of these. The knights tremble, demanding to know why they are making food for vampires who will only use that energy to massacre humans. Now it all makes sense. Why so many vampires outside the walls, even without humans to kill, still had power. The man laughs and asks, so what, he's not killing anyone by doing this? And even if he did, the only thing that matters is that he himself survives. He doesn't care how many die outside, as long as he is safe. That's all that counts. The knights shout at him to wake up. This won't last forever. The vampire's ultimate goal is to wipe out the community completely, and once that happens, he will be killed too. The leader admits it makes sense, but asks how long it will take for everyone outside to die anyway. 5 years, 10, maybe 100 inches. The end, he'll be dead too, but at least he will have lived a peaceful life. Better to choose. Now, stay here with everyone, or spend every day begging for life out there. Back in the carriage, the group says, this place is too dangerous. Better to be chased by Dinesh than get trapped here. Just then they hear screams turning around. They see men staggering covered in blood, saying it's a shame they needed more workers, but now they're all dead. And since the truth has been discovered, obviously no one can leave. What if they bring more people here too late? This is the end for them, because as long as she is inside the queen's womb, they are invincible. Suddenly, the ceiling starts closing. Audrey comments that they try to cover everything in darkness, and someone shouts to light a torch. The soldiers tremble as the first flame lights, and the man reassures them, saying it's okay. But at that same moment, 5 or 6 others run out behind him. The old man closes his eyes in terror, then turns to ask what that noise is, only to see Gunter tearing everyone apart. He's laughing, cutting 3 or 4 with a single stroke. A stomp crushes another, then hits one so hard that the body explodes against his allies. The enemies throw machetes, trying to take him by surprise, but Gunter advances, blocking everything, telling them he'll show them how to really throw. He throws one back, cutting 3 or 4 with a single shot. He says it's ridiculous. They call themselves immortals when they die like idiots. At least now they won't need anyone else to work, since not a single one of them will be left standing. The tribe leader murmurs, this is a problem. The Blood Knight is much stronger than they expected, but it wasn't a lie. They really were invincible. The problem was he seemed to forget they were inside the queen's body. At that moment, the whole floor started moving. Audrey pointed out that from the beginning, it was obvious this whole place was alive. Gunter noticed everything around him was closing, constantly regenerating. It wasn't killing him, but it was limiting his movements. And there seemed to be no way to break those walls. He could only escape alone. Of course, but he wouldn't be able to take anyone else with him. One of the soldiers shouted for them to look, and the entrance they had come through was closing immediately. Gunter ran forward, declaring he would take everyone with him. Already dragging the carriages toward the exit, they tried to gain speed. But the walls changed, the paths closed. Gunter, pulling the carriage with all his strength, managed to break through first, followed by another, but the last one was trapped behind, its passengers screaming. The others wondered what was happening. While Gunter only shouted for someone to show him the rest of the way, they continued. Advancing as he shouted, he was going full speed. The place kept changing, the walls rearranging, but the entrances seemed to remain the same. Out of nowhere, a machete stabbed Gunter's leg. Figures appeared, mocking him, asking if he really thought he could escape. All were part of the queen's body. Dozens appeared around him, smiling, singing that he wouldn't get out of there. The protagonist spat at them, that they were a bunch of disgusting monsters. Clearly none of them were really alive. The leader said that if 2 or 3 blades weren't enough, then how about dozens at once? Steel rained down, deeply embedding in the iron carriage. Inside, the others screamed, desperately asking if Gunter was still alive. He was. He even caught one of the blades with his teeth to protect his face, although his body was pierced with steel. The enemies couldn't believe he had survived, but at that moment, one of their allies was torn apart. Gunter laughed, growling that they would regret giving him so much ammunition. Then he advanced, taunting them. If they thought they could stop him, they should come try. Arian warned that they should have taken the left path, not the right one. He only responded brusquely that it was already very difficult to change now. That would be the route they took. Audrey demanded to know why he was provoking everyone, but Gunter was more focused on calculating how to shift his weight. His left side was more damaged than expected. His leg was shattered. He could barely move. But in moments like these, you provoke your enemy even more. It's the only way to distract them, to prevent them from focusing on your wounds, because a wounded beast is the easiest prey. The creatures kept attacking with wave after wave of blades from who knows where, shouting that his death meant victory for the vampires. They had already abandoned humanity, so now they would serve those monsters. But halfway through the speech, they were cut in two, Gunter growling that they should go to hell. The real problem was that the path kept narrowing, tighter and tighter, harder to pass the carriages. One had to be abandoned, and the survivors advanced on foot. But then Gunter's injured leg finally gave out, breaking beneath him, and the carriage almost tipped over. Aryan asked if he was okay. He gritted his teeth, saying that if his movements weren't so restricted, he would have already destroyed them all. Worse yet, they had just passed what seemed like an exit, only to crash into another wall. One of the soldiers warned they were trapped with nowhere to go. Gunter asked if there was any way to destroy it, to open a path, but the man shook his head. It was impossible. The place regenerated much faster than he could carve, and just when they were trapped in that chamber, with only a small opening outside, the others hesitated. After all, they were also human, and they knew the first to try to cross would be torn apart by Gunter. The girl hesitated, but the man told her to relax, that everyone there risked their lives for each other. The leader then intervened, saying there was no reason to worry. That was an exit right there. They had no food, no water. Time was on their side. He shouted to his people, telling them the offer was still on the table. Anyone who wanted to live could join them. Why throw your life away for others when you can save yourself? He laughs like a madman, while everyone on the other side is left confused. Hunter says he needs a new weapon. What do they have to equip him and get out of this place quickly? Someone explains they have a torso, a pair of legs, another pair of legs, and finally one more pair of legs. Hunter demands to know what the hell that means. Are they trying to turn him into a centipede? Audrey stops, then admits that maybe it's not such a bad idea. He is puzzled. While the cave dwellers remain silent, waiting for something to happen, the bald redhead murmurs that they are resisting more than expected. The leader simply replies that it doesn't matter, that time is on their side. Then suddenly Gunter's voice is in his ear telling him to repeat that. The man startles, stumbles backward, demanding to know where that monster came from. He shouldn't have been able to get through that wall, but there is Gunter, equipped with 8 legs, saying it's incredible. Time to tear them all apart and make them regret it. The guy doesn't understand. He doesn't move that fast, but at that very moment, Gunter kicks him directly in the chin, even saying that the most important thing in this world is your own life. Then we flash back a bit to the moment they trained him to move with all those strange legs. Some even look like rhinoceros legs. He stumbles clumsily, and Audrey tells him to focus. He replies that he has no idea how weird it feels. Aryan explains that that set of legs was designed after studying insect anatomy. In theory, he can climb any mountain, stick to any slippery surface. In a second, he's already climbing everything, boasting that with that speed and reach, no one can get close to him. Not to mention he can transform the legs into something like a scorpion tail strike. He even launches an attack at Aryan, joking that she would die right there. Although he only barely grazes her, she says at least this way he has an advantage. The real problem, however, is how they will escape this labyrinth. He shrugs. Why escape? All he has to do is kill the queen in 2 hours. Audrey admits that's an option, but reminds him the place is a labyrinth. How will he find her? Gunter simply replies he will get a reliable guide to point the way, and with that he charges at full speed, grabbing the human leader by the throat, demanding to know where the queen is. The man refuses at first, until Gunter starts crushing his skull. Then he lets slip that the queen is to the right. The other villagers yell at him not to say anything, warning that if he does, the queen will be killed. But obviously, the man cares more about staying alive. Meanwhile, no one had noticed they had abandoned Velvet's carriage. Some people try to free him, when suddenly, something passes at blinding speed. Velvet wonders what kind of strange creature that was. Punter, still running, growls at his hostage to keep talking, to show him the way out or he will blow his head off. The man quickly says turn left. Survivors break out with machetes to attack from behind, but Gunter swats them away with his tail and moves so fast they can do nothing. Even as they drag him, the leader insists Gunter won't get through the final defense. The queen's mouth was right ahead, but Gunter lunged forward, and when his teeth closed, he shot forward like a bullet, murmured this was interesting, but now the game was over. He was already inside the queen's chamber, while the others panicked, shouting that if she died they would lose the fortress. At that moment, the leader finally understood the truth. If this place fell, the vampires outside would massacre everyone. The problem was they didn't have the strength to stop this other monster. Gunter, who already knew all their secrets, it was all his fault, for miscalculating, for bringing these people here, At this rate, everyone would end up dead anyway. He looked at Gunter and burst into tears, begging for forgiveness, telling the knight that he had risked his life so much just to bring him to this chamber. Gunter was confused while the man sobbed like a child, begging for his life, promising that he would serve humanity forever, swearing that all he wanted was to live. The others began to drop their machetes, falling to their knees, also crying, begging for mercy, admitting that everyone makes bad decisions but that all they ever wanted was to survive. Gunter laughed, saying they were adorable. He loved selfish people like them who acted purely on instinct. Because he was the same, and well, he would show some mercy. He would give them all a second chance if they ran at that moment and stabbed the queen's heart. The first 10 to do so would be forgiven, the rest would die. For a moment they hesitated. The next they were already standing shouting that they fought for humanity. Then everyone charged at the queen, and then she began to remove her mask, looking at them directly. Obviously, she was not going to die easily without resistance, and before anyone could feel pity, they showed us what made her this monster. The woman remembered a family holding a crying baby. A hand rested on her shoulder, someone telling her it was a shame that the second wife had given birth to better children than hers. She looked aside and deeply apologized to her mother. The mother replied harshly that she should not forget. Everything they owned had been invested in that marriage with the duke. They had sacrificed everything to hold on to the royal blood and the power that came with it, even if it meant marrying the trash that was her father. All the hard work she had done her entire life, she should not forget it. The daughter just stood there, responding that she understood, but the mother kept turning her face away, shouting that she understood nothing of the sacrifices that had been made because she had to fail when they were so close to getting what they wanted. Why couldn't she just give an heir? The cross-eyed and broken girl whispered that she didn't know either. She had married a man she didn't even like just to please her mother. She lived in that foreign land, giving her all surrounded by strangers she had never known. All she asked was that her mother, the only person she knew, treat her like a daughter. Instead, the mother slapped her, saying failures don't deserve affection. She was a useless girl. The mother turned to leave when the daughter asked if she had only been born to fulfill her mother's ambitions and greed, if she was nothing more than a tool to bear children and secure ties with that noble house. The mother turned and coldly confirmed, yes, she had finally understood now that she knew the truth. She better be useful for something. The daughter boiled with hatred inside, but held back. Then she told her mother that if her only purpose was to give birth, so be it. She would create something, not the noble blood her mother desired, but something that would put an end to humanity's suffering. And we returned to the fight with Linnell, declaring that she still cannot die. She still hadn't given birth to what was supposed to put an end to humanity once and for all. My theory, maybe she's trying to create a new version of that woman buried with Julio. Honestly, it's one of the few things that would make sense, and then out of nowhere the whole forest explodes, with her escaping, murmuring that it's still too soon. Meanwhile, the humans run after her, shouting that Gunter only promised to forgive the first 10, so they will be first. They pile on top of each other, trying to get ahead, when suddenly something cuts them all off. It's the Nash announcing he has found enough fists. Everyone turns to flee, while Gunter's soldiers comment that at least they managed to escape that place. The protagonist then appears carrying Velvet, saying he found what he was looking for and that it's time to leave. The idiot. He keeps demanding to be treated with respect, but Gunter simply throws him to the ground and orders him to be locked up again like the trash he is. At the same time, the human leader orders one of his men not to block his way, only to receive a punch in the mouth and be sent to hell. He staggers to curse back, but hears a sound behind him. It is Nash, saying he still has some punches left to collect. The leader stands up, apparently recognizing him, and tries to negotiate. He tells Dash not to worry, that he will help him meet the quota. Just tell him how many he needs, and this humble servant will gather them all. All he wants is for them to spare their lives. But Dash keeps approaching the leader, asks what he is doing, only to be torn apart, devoured alive, split in two, until nothing is left but hands. Meanwhile, Gunter runs at full speed, carrying the carriages on his 3 legs. Inside, they murmur that surely he already knew from the beginning what was happening in that production nest. Audrey, on the other hand, tells the fools they deserve to die there, but that at least now they have bought more time for everyone. One of the men insists on going back to kill Lionel, but Gunter cuts him off, saying they don't have time. Facing 2 high-ranking demons at once would be impossible. They would be completely consumed. Besides, now that their nest has been destroyed, that monster that spat blood won't be able to do anything. Still, Linnell herself staggers forward through the forest, murmuring that it has not yet been born, and has not yet given birth to what she needs. Some time later, one of the soldiers riding in the carriage loses consciousness and falls to the ground immediately. Others shout at Gunter to stop, that they need to help him. Mr. Eric says he hasn't slept in 3 days, that it's too much. Also, he's hungry. Gunter mocks, saying the guy is a failure, but even he begins to feel his energy draining and decides to stop for an hour inside the carriage. Velvet murmurs that humans are a failure, Victory is so close. After all, they have destroyed the vampire's energy source, and yet they are hesitating. Only 102 seeds left, and all they need to do is keep moving forward. The others mostly ignore him. The focus is on Gunter feeding Arian, who clearly doesn't feel like it. He orders her to eat, but she insists there are others who need it more. Gunter explodes, angrily demanding she eat more than 5 spoonfuls. If she collapses, he will too. She tries to protest, but he pushes the spoon into her mouth, telling her to shut up and eat. If she doesn't, he will kill her himself. Or Audrey comments that they are such a romantic couple, but the man beside her shakes his head, saying he doesn't think that's the case. Gunter looks around and points out that only 10 remain compared to those who left behind the walls. It's a devastating decline. He asks Arian if she's sure this part of the plan will even work. Doubt spreads through the group. No matter how much they don't want to give up, they also don't want to throw their lives away in vain. Gunter hears this and says no one will die in vain, because even if everyone else dies, their deaths will serve as fuel for him to stay alive. In other words, the plan will work as long as he remains standing. One of the men responds that if the plan depends solely on Gunter's pure will to survive somehow, that actually makes him feel more relieved. The carriage returns to the road with the protagonist moving at full speed, the group hunting rabbits and eating what they find. Another day passes, and Velvet announces only 61 miles left. It's an incredible feat for mortals. Their journey is almost at the end. It's just a shame that, of course, he suddenly appears. A figure with a hat crosses. It's just a shame that, of course, he suddenly appears. A figure with a hat crosses in front of them, and it's Julius. He looks at Gunter and says he must be the Death Knight. Everyone recognizes him instantly, demanding to know what he's doing there. Julius tells them to calm down. There's no need to be afraid. He has come in peace. He admits he has failed to feel sympathy for their ambitions, but he is doing his best to show compassion, and through that, he realized that the Death Knight is making the wrong decision, because the moment mortals win this war against humans, they will want to kill him, and also the so-called Immortal Knight. Gunter demands to know what he is talking about, and Julius finally makes the offer everyone was waiting for. It is not the mortals who will grant Gunter his true wish, it is Julius. That is why he asks if he is willing to listen. Gunter frowns, not understanding, while Audrey shouts that it is a trap, but he tells her to be quiet, saying he will be the one to decide if it is a trap or not. He orders Julius to let him go. If it is a joke, he will kill him immediately. Julius responds with the obvious. Gunter is only alive because they need him as a weapon, but when the war ends, a weapon will no longer be necessary. Whether the survivor is the new king or the true hound, someone will want to see him dead because he is a dangerous variable. Gunter remains silent, thoughtful. Audrey keeps insisting to ignore him, that Julius is just talking nonsense, but Gunter ignores her and asks how he would survive. Julius says that before that, he needs to talk to the boy. First, it is not clear if the boy or Gunter himself will die in this fight. Vampires are the closest mortals have had to call death. That is why he wants to understand the will of everyone present, just as he wants them to understand his own. Gunter is completely lost, demanding to know what the hell this lunatic is talking about. Then Julius explains the plans he has. He wants to be the first to do something no short-lived mortal has ever achieved. Truly understanding each other, the knights look at each other confused, but they know the man in front of them is Julius. Audrey, however, murmurs that no matter how much she looks, this is a trap. Arian warns they should attack first when suddenly, Julius mentions Gunter's parents. Like any being in this world, he too had to be born from someone but his father. Looking at the sun, once said that life was boring, then went outside and let himself be burned alive. Those were his last words before going out and dying under the sunlight. Just as his mother had done, Gunter saw his father crumble to ashes, and yet he felt nothing. That was the feeling of immortality every day. Hundreds of creatures are born and die before his eyes, each leaving traces that become part of the earth. But unlike humans, vampires leave nothing behind. They disappear completely, and the moment he realized that there was nothing left, the next day worth living for, he chose to sleep for eternity. Some humans walk through the catacombs, carrying the king who approaches a coffin and admits it is true. There really was a pure-blood vampire sealed in that place. It was something he had searched for all his life, and finally, God had given him the opportunity to regain his youth along with the world. But when the king opened his eyes again, his head had been cut off, blood spilled. But at that very moment it disappeared. The king screamed, desperately demanding to know why he could not preserve himself. He did not want to live a life in which he had to keep that creature imprisoned, living in fear. The man beside him explained that nothing of a pure-blood vampire remains once it leaves its body. The king said he already knew, but wanted them to find a solution, because his eternal youth would disappear the moment that vampire truly died. Without it, it would be the end of the nation. He was the one protecting all humanity. The master of this world, one of his servants, lowered his hood and suggested that the king try to absorb pure parts of the demon Exactly what he was already considering, feeding on his fingers, his feet, and everything else. The king, he insisted that he did it all for the good of humanity. Did he bite everything, everything, everything? Apparently yes, and even after devouring the vampire's flesh, nothing worked. No result stood before a mirror. He wondered what else he had to do to become a perfect being of eternal life. The servant then told him that only one part remained, the riskiest but the most effective, the source of power of the pure-blood vampire, the heart. The king licked his lips, thinking of the eternal source of infinite vitality. It was the only thing that, once completely destroyed, could kill one of those creatures. And if the heart was not whole, vampires lost control of their blood, but what no one knew for sure was how much a heart could be damaged and still function, maybe even cut in half, maybe in thirds or even quarters. No one dared to take that risk, of course, because everyone wanted Julius to stay alive, so the king cut a small piece to devour it. He raised the plate, ate it, and declared it was the taste of perfect vitality. It was delicious, but that small piece of heart did not grant him eternal life. Instead, it only fueled his hunger even more. He began to consume increasingly larger pieces each time until finally, he had devoured half of Julius's heart. The king screamed, demanding more and more, while the strange servant who had suggested everything remained silently watching. The scene then changed to Julius opening his eyes. Someone whispered that he had finally awakened. The girl in front of him said that having had his head cut off for 900 years must have left his memory fractured. But all that time he had been nothing more than a tool for humanity. Countless humans had fed on his blood, and all she wanted was to beg forgiveness on behalf of each of them. She said she was willing to die by his hands, and that eased her pain. The only thing she asked was that he forgive humanity. Julius, however, only asked who she was. The soldier at his side declared that he was in the presence of the most benevolent and noble princess that ever existed, the true Queen Isabella. But she interrupted, saying he was wrong, that she was nothing more than another sinful human. Julius replied that he already knew. He knew that humans had been drinking his blood and chewing his heart, piece by piece, and yet he held no resentment or hatred for what they had done to him, because long ago, life had already lost its meaning outside the cabin. Isabel explained that they had built this place far from everyone. As long as she lived, she would remain by his side, and protecting him so he would never again fall into human hands. Julius, still confused, asked why she was going so far for him. She only answered that she was sure that if she had not done it, eventually someone else would have. Time passed, and she told him she had brought another book. It seemed to be one of the most beloved among humans, and asked if he wanted her to read it. He told her to do as she wished. More time passed. The books piled up, and she began to age. One night she screamed in panic, saying they had discovered the place, and that they would have to move to a safer site. He said it was okay, that if it was her wish he would follow her. In the carriage, Julius only watched her face marked by fear. They traveled days and nights. At one point, the knight with a mustache told the queen that unfortunately they no longer had money or allies. If she allowed, he would like to spend the last days of his life with his family. She thanked him for everything he had done until then. Later, Isabella told Julius that having spent her life serving someone as extraordinary as him had been wonderful, but sadly her time was ending, and he would be alone when she died. Julius replied that for the first time in 100 years, he had had a dream. In that dream, they grew up together, while their children became adults. In the end, they were buried side by side, while their children surrounded their grave. Isabella answered that maybe dreams were impossible by nature. It was then that Julius found his purpose in life. He wished that the day Isabella breathed her last breath would be the day he put an end to his own immortality. But that dream never came true. They were still in the cabin. When Julius told her he had 1 year left, that was the limit before his death. Isabella only asked if he would be by her side when she passed. He told her yes, that he would stay with her in the coffin where she would be buried. Isabella then asked that if that was his wish, they bury them in a place where no one could ever find them. He agreed, since it was her wish. That night, Julius dreamed again. In his dream, he was buried deep in the cold earth. Unable to breathe, yet he did not feel suffocated or uncomfortable. Because Isabella was by his side, he could feel his flesh decomposing, insects feeding on his body, yet for the first time he felt at peace. And as his own body broke down, he was slowly absorbed by the earth. He began to wake from the dream, but when he turned to one side, someone spoke, bringing words from the King of Kings. Humans are idiots because they believe that the ridiculous sense of justice they cling to will never betray them. The man had stabbed a sword into Isabella. He immediately pulled it out and threw it into the snow, saying the ex-princess was worthless. His task was to hunt the pure-blood vampire. They advanced toward Julius, who simply glared at them and destroyed them all with a single blow. He approached Isabella, telling her that her fermented spirit was too dangerous. He knew this was not the way she wanted to die. He could save her from death by turning her into a high-ranking vampire. If that was her wish, he leaned in to bite her, promising she would gain eternal life by drinking mortal blood, but she asked him to stop. Over time, she had learned that humans did not become more wise with age, only greedier. She begged his forgiveness but said that unfortunately, she wanted to leave it all behind and let fate take its course. Looking at her hand, she confessed that her only regret was not having achieved one thing before dying, something she had never been able to see. Julius told her to just ask if she wanted all those who had done that to her to die, or for the entire royal family to be destroyed. He would make it happen, but Isabella said what she wished to see. One day was a world where no human suffered from another's greed. Julius then gave her his word that one day the world she wished for would be created. She then placed her hand on his face and told him he was still her beloved melancholic god. And with that, Isabella died. We return to the present with Julius, saying that after her death, he spent years and years researching ways to create a world without greed. It was then that he discovered mortals had a unique trait. They were cornered creatures who naturally worked together to survive. The problem was that selfishness and greed were always intertwined with those intentions. If there was any species on this planet born to torture each other in the name of survival, it was mortals. It was then that he came to the conclusion that for a world without suffering to exist, humanity itself could no longer exist because they were the true cause of greed and den. Like this video that helps Maso keep bringing more juicy content to his viewers. Activate the mischievous little bell, and I'm out. To be continued.